Chapter 989. Headache. Which family should I join? Bufong was stunned by Mu Luer's question. Looking at Mu Luer's straight figure and the white hand she stretched out, Bufong's expression became a little strange. Mu Luer's words were reasonable, and Bufong really needed an immortal flame to improve his cooking skills. However, although Bufong wanted to obtain an immortal flame, he preferred to open a small restaurant. He wanted to do business quietly and slowly improve his culinary skills. As for the immortal flame, according to Mu Luer, it should be in the ruins. Ruins, Bufong's lips curved upwards. With you, what ruins can I go to? Mu Luer looked at Bufong's curved lips, dumbfounded. What kind of expression does Honorbu have? I'm sorry, I don't want to join any family. I just want to quietly stay in this restaurant and cook. Bufong faintly said, facing the sea, where the flowers bloom in the warmth of spring. See your sister. Where did the sea come from? Mu Luer's face darkened. She didn't think that Bufong would reject her invitation. Did Bufong really not want an immortal flame? Without an immortal flame, it would be hard for Bufong's cooking skills to improve. After all, if he wanted to cook more difficult dishes, how could he not have an immortal flame? And if he wanted to obtain an immortal flame, he had to enter the ruins. If Bufong didn't join any family, how could he enter the ruins? How could he obtain an immortal flame? She didn't think that Bufong was such a chef who didn't want to improve. Honorbu, don't you want to think about it? With Honorbu's talent, you can obtain a lot of resources if you join the Mu family. Becoming a second-grade heaven chief won't be a dream. Mu Luer frowned and said seriously. However, she was quickly disappointed. That was because Bufong still shook his head and rejected her request. Manager Chun had been watching the conversation between Mu Luer and Bufong. He originally thought that Bufong would join the Mu family. After all, Mu Luer's admiration for Bufong was obvious. She did not hesitate to persuade the two-star true immortal realm expert from the Heaven Chief Hall to stop the Tong family. If it was someone else, they might have already been moved by Mu Luer's sincerity. However, for Manager Chin's understanding of Bufong, this mortal chef from the lower realm had an incomparable pride in his bones. That pride made his heart throb, although he did not know where this arrogance came from. However, Administrator Chun understood that he had to find another way to invite Bufong to join the Mu family. Let Bufong marry the young pavilion master and marry into the family. Forget about this idea. Cough, cough. Just as Mu Luer was feeling anxious, Manager Chun suddenly coughed and interrupted her. Mu Luer froze. Manager Chin stroked his beard and nodded at Mu Luer. Then, he turned to look at Bufong with a smile on his face. Honorbu, since you don't want to join our Mu family, we won't force you. However, can my Mu family invite Honorbu to be the teacher of our young chefs? Manager Chin asked. Huh? As soon as he said that, not only Bufong, but even Mu Luer was stunned. Every aristocratic family had a Heaven Chief team. However, the number of Heaven Chief was limited, so every aristocratic family aimed to nurture a Heaven Chief. They would gather the young chefs with cooking talent and teach them how to cook in order to become a Heaven Chief. However, normally, the person who taught the young chefs was the Heaven Chief. Manager Chen actually invited Honorbu. Would Honorbu agree? Of course, as a reward, we will let Honorbu obtain a spot to enter the land of inheritance. How about it? Manager Chen said with a smile. Mu Luer's brows furrowed even tighter. Inviting a Heaven Chief teacher was not a casual matter. Would her father agree? Young Pavilion Master, you might not know, but the land of inheritance is about to open. The Heaven Chief in the family is busy preparing to enter the land of inheritance. In order to obtain better resources, those little fellows in the family don't have any lessons. They are busy all day. Manager Chen stroked his beard as he spoke. But Mu Luer still wanted to say something. Inviting Bufong to be a Heaven Chief teacher, wouldn't it be unfair to Bufong? Regarding Manager Chen's words, Bufong was a little confused. What did he mean? Let him become a teacher in the Mu family? And a cooking teacher at that? This Manager Chen really had his own ideas. Bufong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. How could he become a teacher? The restaurant was so busy every day. However, at this time, the serious voice of the system resounded in his mind. Temporary mission. Become a cooking teacher for the younger generation of the Mu family and find a chef apprentice for the Heaven Chief restaurant. Mission reward. Enhanced abyssal chili sauce. Bufong almost spat out a mouthful of blood. What kind of weird mission was the system giving him? Bufong was speechless. Being a teacher and teaching apprentices were different. As a teacher, he had to teach a lot of students. He couldn't be as casual as teaching apprentices. System. Come out. I promise I won't beat you to death, Bufong said gloomily. Host, as someone who wants to stand at the top of the food chain in the fantasy world, how can you not have students everywhere? The system thinks highly of you. You are the best. The serious voice of the system resounded. A bowl of chicken soup for the soul was spilled. Bufong was speechless once again. What was the connection between becoming the god of cooking and having students everywhere? When Manager Chun saw that Bufong was in a daze, he narrowed his eyes and stroked his beard. Owner Bu, I wonder if you are interested in this old man's suggestion? Muluer had also thought it through. If Bufong agreed to their request, it wouldn't be a bad thing. At the very least, it wouldn't be bad for the Mu family. Although Bufong hadn't officially joined the Mu family, it was impossible for him to be recruited by other families. Thus, Muluer's eyes shone brightly as she looked at Bufong. Bufong's face stiffened. Bufong wanted to reject the system's temporary mission, but he did not accept it. Who knew that the system would give him such a mission? At least give him a reliable one, such as entering the ruins to snatch the immortal flame, asking him to become a cooking teacher. This made things difficult for him. Okay, I agree. When Bufong said this, he felt a little conflicted in his heart. Muluer and Manager Chun were stunned. Did Bufong really agree to it? Hades Era and the others were also dumbfounded. What the? Owner Bu actually agreed to such a request? Was Owner Bu going to become a teacher? I agree. Where do we start? Bufong asked expressionlessly. Since he had agreed, he didn't feel conflicted anymore. Moreover, he felt that the system's mission was a little naughty. It actually wanted him to choose a future apprentice from the younger generation of the Mu family. However, regarding this request, Bufong was still very satisfied. At least, he didn't have to worry about how to choose a chef apprentice. Tomorrow, I will bring Owner Bu to the Mu family, Muluer said. Oh, okay, but I have a request. You have to teach him after my business hours are over, Bufong said. Teaching was one thing, but he couldn't neglect the business of making money. Of course. A smile reappeared on Muluer's face. After both sides came to an agreement, Muluer, Manager Chun, and the others left the restaurant with smiles on their faces. Bufong looked at their departing figures and scratched his head. Starting tomorrow, he would become a teacher. His heart was a little excited. Tong family, a beam of light whistled past. Then the Tong family's head, Tong Wudi, appeared in the Tong family's courtyard. With a wave of his hand, Tong Mu's figure landed in the courtyard. Tong Cheng's father, the great elder of the Tong family, Tong Xian, walked out of his room. When he saw Tong Mu lying in the courtyard, his pupils shrank. Tong Wudi's aura was like a terrifying dragon, and it made Tong Xian feel a little suffocated. Family head, this, Tong Xian trembled as he asked. Go to the immortal ingredient treasury and find a 3-mark green flood dragon's gallbladder. Feed it to Tong Mu, and his broken arm will grow back. After that, come to the main hall to see me. Tong Wudi's face was gloomy. He coldly looked at Tong Xian before flicking his sleeves and leaving. Tong Xian stood in the same spot, and his entire body was stiff. He could feel a trace of dissatisfaction from Tong Wudi's tone. Also, why was Tong Mu so heavily injured? Could it be that the Tong family's silver-armored army and Tong Mu couldn't destroy that mortal's restaurant? Tong Mu's condition wasn't good. One of his arms was broken, and fresh blood was flowing out. Dead. They're all dead. My soldiers are all dead. Tong Mu's pupils constricted. His eyes were filled with rage and fear. The silver-armored army was completely annihilated. If it wasn't for Tong Wudi, Tong Mu would have died. Tong Xian let out a breath, and his heart palpitated. What kind of existence did his son provoke? Looking at Tong Mu's miserable state, Tong Xian turned around and headed to the immortal ingredient treasury. Tong family's main hall. Tong Woody's expression was ice-cold as he sat on a chair. His aura was terrifying, and it caused people to tremble. Tong Xian slowly walked into the main hall and faced Tong Woody. Family head, the three-striped green flood dragon's gallbladder has been fed to Tong Mu. Tong Xian said respectfully. That mortal's restaurant, bang. Tong Xian wanted to ask, but Tong Woody slapped the table, causing it to shatter into pieces. Don't mention that restaurant again. This time, swallow this loss. Tong Woody said coldly. Tong Xian's eyes narrowed, and he couldn't believe it. This time, how many people from the Tong family died? Tong Woody actually asked them to swallow it? How could they swallow it? What was Tong Woody afraid of? After a long time, Tong Woody said dispiritedly, "Don't provoke it anymore. That dog is back." Dog! Tong Xian furrowed his brows, and in the next moment, he seemed to have thought of something. His eyes widened, and a look of disbelief appeared in his eyes. Family head, you're talking about the Earth prison dog that caused such a huge commotion in the Heaven Chief world? Yes. That dog that ate half of the immortal ingredient treasuries of all the aristocratic families in the 5th layer of the Heaven Chief world is back. It's still as strong as ever, and it's still the same mangy skin. Tong Woody sighed. He didn't expect that the dog's return would be witnessed by him, Tong Woody. This news should have spread throughout the entire immortal city very quickly. Why would that dog return when the ruins opened in the Heaven Chief world? Could it be that it wanted to eat the immortal ingredient treasuries when they enter the ruins? Tong Woody sucked in a breath of cold air. He felt as though he had thought of the key point, and his teeth instantly ached. Pass down my order. From today onwards, the Tong family's immortal ingredient treasuries will be guarded by 10 layers. No living creatures are allowed to enter. The next day, the sky was clear. Mu Luer wore a simple long dress as she leisurely walked to the Heaven Chief restaurant. She pushed open the restaurant's door. The restaurant's business hours were almost over. She found a place to sit and supported her chin with both hands. Dinkling, the bell hanging on the doorframe rang. Then, Bufong walked out of the kitchen. The sleeves of his vermilion robe were rolled up, revealing Bufong's strong and fair arms. Owner Bu, is the business day over? It's time to go see your students. When Mu Luer saw Bufong, a bright smile appeared on her face. Bufong's face stiffened. After a long time, he let out a long sigh. Okay, let's go. Chapter 990. You mortal. You actually dared to bully Cece. I want revenge. There were many people in the mansion, and when they saw Mu Luer, they would greet her politely. You wanted revenge, right? Come here. Bang, bang. As soon as Bufong left, the black walk fell to the ground, making a deafening sound. A big boy wearing a brocade robe ran to the side of the crying little girl. He rolled her eyes at Hades' era's back. Swoosh. Do you want me to show you around the Mu family's mansion? Mu Luer asked. Her mental force surged again. Mu Luer was startled and felt that it was a pity. Little sister Nethery, that young man Bufong wants to be a teacher. I'm really curious. How can that young man Bufong be someone's teacher? Won't he scare the little girl? Hades' era muttered as he bit the spicy strip in his mouth. When the little girl came back to her senses, she immediately burst into tears. The boy who had shouted earlier froze. After all, Mu Luer was the daughter of the immortal city's city lord and the young pavilion master of the Heaven Chief Hall. If there was a chance, she still wanted to persuade Bufong to join the Mu family. She really thought highly of Bufong. Take this kitchen knife. Go to a corner and swing it 1,000 times. Don't you want revenge? Wait until you're familiar with it. Mommy, this uncle is so scary. Oh, what other tricks do you have? Immortal school. Musho looked at Bufong with some fear as he took the kitchen knife. The brat's shoulders trembled as they jumped in fright. Before they reached the 2nd floor of the pavilion, they could already hear the clamor coming from upstairs. The surrounding cheers stopped abruptly. Bufong sighed inwardly. Not bad. That was because he discovered that the spirit beast eggs that he had imprisoned with his mental power had cracked open with a loud sound. There was an entrance to the wall, and Mu Luer and Bu Fong were there. Bu Fong nodded. Then he saw several spirit beast eggs with brilliant lights flying toward him. The broken egg yolk and yolk rushed at Bu Fong again. Bu Fong's hand shook, and a pitch-black kitchen knife appeared in his hand. The kitchen knife fell into Bu Fong's hand, and with a casual wave, the egg yolk and the egg yolk were slapped back by Bu Fong. My father is the great elder of the city lord's mansion. The boy's heart trembled, but he quickly puffed out his chest and walked over. There was another loud noise, and the podium was torn apart. This is the place where our Mu clan trains the Heaven Chief. The younger generations of the Mu clan are all inside. Wow. It was blocked. Mu Shou, it's your turn. Bu Fong looked at the boy expressionlessly and said lightly, "Whoosh." She thought that she could have some alone time with owner Bu. Bu Fong released his mental force once again, and the black walk floated in the air. Mu Shou's legs trembled, and he struggled to hold the kitchen knife with both hands. Bu Fong was bewildered, and he turned to look. Mu Luer prayed inwardly. The surrounding kids' shouts became more and more excited, and there was even the sound of them hitting the table. If you're curious, follow them. Who knows? Maybe Bu Fong will use spicy strips to tempt the students. You said coldly. Her black hair cascaded down to her waist like a waterfall. It seemed that the Mu family also had its own bitterness. Bu Fong's dragon bone kitchen knife slashed down again, and the podium was slashed once more. No, I'm looking forward to you slashing me with your kitchen knife. If you don't slash me, I won't feel comfortable, Bu Fong said. All right, move aside. Then, he raised his head, his eyes ferociously staring at Bu Fong. A childish voice rang out. This spirit beast egg was filled with dense spirit energy. With just a glance, one could tell that it wasn't an ordinary egg. The group of brats in the pavilion looked at Bu Fong, dumbfounded. Then, let's go. Bu Fong put down the sleeves of his vermilion robe and said to Mu Luer. This pavilion was octagonal, with flying eaves and red tiles. The pillars were vermilion, and it looked ancient. Bu Fong casually said as he handed the kitchen knife to the dumbfounded Mu Shou. The childish voice rang out again, accompanied by the cheers of the children. Just a daily operation, Bu Fong said with an expressionless face. This group of spoiled brats. Sorry, I got used to it. This official road was very spacious, and there were many small merchants and peddlers on both sides. It smashed into the brat who threw the egg at him. He had clearly thrown the egg, so why did it come back? In the next instant, Bu Fong no longer paid attention to Mu Shou, turning his head to look at the other brats. What's your name? Bu Fong coldly glanced at the boy. Bang! The brats kept quiet out of fear. None of them wanted to be chopped into pieces like the lectern. Mu Luer seemed to understand what Bu Fong was thinking, and a bitter expression appeared on her face. However, in the next instant, Bu Fong's eyebrows trembled. We're here. This is the Mu family's residence. The black walk was incomparably heavy. When it smashed down, it suppressed the air. However, Bu Fong's mental force moved, and the white flower was fixed in the air. Bu Fong said expressionlessly, "These brats were really noisy." The inner area was built around the heaven tree, so the closer it was to the heaven tree, the more majestic the spirit energy was. The boy's words suddenly stopped. Bu Fong's mind moved. Bang! My time is limited. I'll teach you how to cook. Learn as much as I teach you. I'm called Mu Shou. Bu Fong wiped the golden dragon bone kitchen knife, then carried it and slowly walked to the lectern in the middle of the pavilion. As soon as he entered the inner area, Bu Fong felt that the air seemed to be different. Another loud sound rang out. As the branches and leaves rose, the immortal tree soared into the clouds. We're here already? We're not even close to the heaven tree. The Mu family of the City Lord's residence is located in the inner area. Could it be that they can't even reach the position of the top aristocratic families? The 8 brats were still in a daze. Cece sniffled, her eyes wide open. The spiritual energy in the inner area is very dense. Moreover, There's an array underground that absorbs most of the spiritual energy in the outer area. This place is very suitable for cultivation. This is also why most of the Heaven Chief would join the aristocratic families and stay in the inner area, Mu Luer said. The flower was also sprinkled on the black walk. Footsteps rang out from upstairs, and Yu's cold figure slowly walked out. The spiritual energy in the air was active, as though it wanted to rush into his skin, making him feel refreshed. This was a very spacious mansion. The mansion occupied a very large area, and the spiritual energy inside the mansion was a bit denser than the outside world. Musho's voice suddenly stopped. Bufang looked at the signboard hanging in front of the pavilion and muttered to himself. "Oh, bring me a lectern," Bufang said as he turned his head to look at Mu Luer, who was lying at the entrance of the pavilion. "What you said makes sense. Forget it, forget it. I'll go to the immortal city and wander around. It's shameful to fight with a bunch of brats over spicy strips." Mu Luer's eyes narrowed, and she smiled. When Bufang's head emerged from the pavilion, Mu Luer smiled and said, "In the end, you opened a food stall and made that woman Tong you regret it so much that she was expelled from the Heaven Chief Hall." Bufang nodded, clasping his hands behind his back as he stepped onto the second floor of the pavilion. Mu Luer was stunned. Then, she quickly turned around and ran to find a lectern. Then, the golden dragon bone kitchen knife appeared in her hand. This girl was quite cute. She wore an exquisite dress, and her hair was tied in a ponytail. Her eyes were big and bright, and there was baby fat on her face. At this moment, her nose was red from crying, and snot hung from it. "Revenge? You're really capable. My name is Musho. My father is..." She had never suffered such grievances before. No wonder the cultivation of the people in the immortal city was so strong. After all, cultivating while bathing in this kind of spiritual energy, one's cultivation would naturally increase quickly. Hades' Era's eyes lit up. In the end, he snorted and shook his head. He clasped his hands behind his back, held the spicy strip in his mouth, and left the restaurant with his chest exposed. Boom, swish, the top aristocratic families in the immortal city were built next to the Heaven Tree. Bufang raised his eyebrows, and his face didn't even blush as he said this. The lectern, which was made of precious wood, was directly cut in half by Bufang. Bufang nodded his head. The air instantly became quiet. Bufang's eyebrows instantly twitched. Musho's mouth twitched. He felt so wrong that he wanted to cry. "No need. Just take me to see those little guys." Bufang rejected Mu Luer's words. Bufang calmly said, "I'm not afraid of you. My father is the great elder of the city lord's mansion. She hoped that Owner Bu could stop that group of naughty brats from causing trouble. Smash, smash. Make sure you hit them." Those eggs floated in the air. The eggshells fell to the ground, breaking into pieces. Mu Luer said with a strange smile on her face, "I'll accompany you in." Along with that, there was an uproar of laughter. In the next instant, her gaze fell on the crying girl. Instantly, then, the two of them stepped into the pavilion. Bam! Bam! The Heaven Tree towered into the clouds, and its trunk was incomparably huge. Looking up, one could only see the luxuriant branches and leaves. Bufang continued to stride forward. The moment he stepped into the pavilion on the second floor, he felt a huge black walk smashing down on his head. In the distance, a big ball of white flour was smashing toward his head. Facing Bufang was a little girl who had egg fluid spilled all over her body. At this moment, this little girl had a dumbfounded look on her face, as though she didn't know what had happened. The crying Cece widened her eyes, her nose dripping with mucus. Daily operation? Hades' Era held a spicy strip in his mouth as he leaned on the chair. Watching Bufang walk out of the restaurant, his figure gradually disappearing from his sight. His mouth continuously made clicking sounds. He raised his head and looked into the distance. "I don't want to take revenge. Can I?" Bufang glanced at the boy in his early 20s and said, without saying anything, he followed Mu Luer's footsteps and entered the Mu family's mansion. Musho was dumbfounded. He blankly looked at Bufang. Why was he still chopping? He didn't say his father's name again. The Mu family isn't as strong as you think in the Immortal City. Otherwise, Tong, you wouldn't have dared to be so presumptuous in the Heaven Chief Hall, Mu Luer said. The two of them continued to walk forward. Soon, they passed the Immortal City's periphery and arrived at the entrance of the inner circle. Bufong was stunned. We're here? Looking at the white flower, the corners of Bufong's mouth couldn't help but twitch. The loud noise caused the 8 brats to be dumbfounded. Don't tell me you want 2,000? Bufong tilted his head and asked. The Immortal City's inner and outer circle were different. There was a new wall separating them. After walking around the mansion for a while, the spacious mansion seemed like a small city. Cece, don't cry. I'll help you take revenge. Mu Luer was stunned. Bufong was really not modest. Her mouth slightly twitched. From today onwards, I'll be your teacher. I'll guide your cooking skills. Whoever performs well, I'll reward him with a spicy strip. Do your best, brats. Bufong said. Huh, blocked again. Musho, you're too weak. Watch this grandaunt. When I first met you, Tong, you was making things difficult for you. I thought you were just an ordinary chef. In the next moment, his eyes suddenly widened. His legs staggered, and he almost fell. Wah, I was hit by an egg. Cece was hit by an egg. However, before the boy could finish speaking, Bufong waved the dragon bone kitchen knife again, breaking the podium in half. Mu Luer's identity was not simple, so the guards did not make things too difficult for Bufong. They let Bufong enter the inner circle. Downstairs, Mu Luer looked at the white flower floating not far from Bufong, and the embarrassment on her face became more intense. There were a total of 8 brats, 3 girls and 5 boys. Mu Luer's face was a little embarrassed. Owner Boo, you can go up. I won't disturb you anymore. Don't cry. Whoever cries and makes a fuss will be punished by cutting 1,000 carrots. Bufong expressionlessly slashed the dragon bone kitchen knife down. I have to use this knife 1,000 times? Musho felt a wave of despair. This kitchen knife was so heavy that it made him feel despair. Mu Luer brought Bufong to walk on the official road of the Immortal City. Boom! Mu Luer said. A loud sound rang out. As they entered the inner circle, the trunk of the heaven tree came into view. Chapter 991. Bufong's words did not receive much response. Pairs of big eyes were still staring at Bufong. This made Bufong slightly embarrassed. Teacher Boo, may I ask what a spicy strip is? A boy asked curiously as he looked at Bufong. This boy was a little older, and he looked more muscular than the others. Spicy strip? It's a kind of magical food, the kind that people can't stop eating, Bufong said seriously as he rubbed his chin. Mu Luer quickly returned and placed a brand new podium in front of Bufong. Looking at the podium, Bufong expressionlessly glanced at Mu Luer. He did not ask why the new podium was made of stone. Mu Luer retreated, leaving the time for Bufong. This is the Immortal Cultivation School, a place to teach you culinary skills. Since you can come here, your culinary talent should be pretty good. Bufong said, since you plan to start learning culinary skills, you should set your goal to become the Heaven Chief. So, from today onwards, what you will learn is not just words, but real knives and wok. Bufong said as he looked at the group of naughty children. Bufong walked to Cece's side, raising his palm. Instantly, the egg fluid on Cece's body was extracted by Bufong. The sticky feeling on Cece's body also disappeared. Her cute big eyes stared at Bufong, full of curiosity. Teacher Boo, are you saying that we should be like Musho, wielding a kitchen knife? Cece asked as she wiped her snot. Maybe we should cut 1,000 big radishes, a child said loudly. Then the whole audience burst out laughing. Bufong raised his eyebrows and expressionlessly looked at the little boy who had just spoken. It was another boy, but he was very good-looking, the kind that was even more good-looking than a girl. Did you say that just now? What's your name? Bufong asked calmly. The boy was taken aback. Then, he glanced at Bufong in fear, feeling a little scared. Now they were a little afraid of being asked by Bufong for their names. My name is Muyu. Muyu, who looked like a girl, said. You look like you want to cut a big carrot, don't you? Bufong's mouth twitched. Muyu's pupils constricted, and he gasped. In the next moment, in a corner of the pavilion, Mu Yu looked at the pile of white radishes beside him with a face full of despair. "Okay, let's start the lesson. Take out your kitchenware first," Bu Fong said. When the brats heard this, they looked at each other in dismay. They didn't have any kitchenware. They were too young, and their families didn't even provide them with kitchenware. Bu Fong paused for a moment before he figured it out. He raised his eyebrows. Finally, he asked the system if it could provide kitchenware. The system was silent for a moment before agreeing. Buzz with a flash of light, small and exquisite kitchen knives appeared in front of Bu Fong. These knives are just right for the brats to hold. Sometimes the system was still very humane. The brats looked at the small and exquisite kitchen knives with cute spirit beast carvings on the handles. Their eyes all lit up. They all found a kitchen knife that they liked and played with it, not wanting to put it down. In the distance, Mu Shou and Mu Yu also looked over enviously. "You two should get down to business first. There will be kitchen knives, and there will also be iron pots," Bu Fong said. Mu Yu and Mu Shou immediately lowered their heads in regret. Next, Bu Fong began to teach these brats how to cook and the main points of cooking. The pitch-black night gradually shrouded the sky. The brats all left. Bu Fong gently exhaled, clasping his hands as he walked out of the pavilion. Outside the pavilion, Mu Luer was waiting for him. "I'll have to trouble owner Bu. The banquet is ready. Why don't you eat before going back?" Mu Luer asked. Bu Fong was stunned, but he shook his head. He only came to teach these brats to complete the system's temporary task. He didn't want to have too many entanglements with the Mu family. "Since owner Bu doesn't want to go, I won't force him. However, there are some words that need to be said." Mu Luer looked at Bu Fong. "My father knows that you're teaching the children, and he didn't refuse. Thus, the quota to enter the land of inheritance can be given to you. This time, the land of inheritance will open in a month. I hope that owner Bu can prepare well." Mu Luer said seriously. "At that time, owner Bu will enter with the members of my Mu family's Heaven Chief team. The land of inheritance is not like the immortal city. It's very dangerous. Everyone is here for opportunities and resources, so they will prepare well." Mu Luer said. There were opportunities and resources in the land of inheritance, but naturally, they were accompanied by danger. Opportunities and risks always coexisted. Bu Fong furrowed his brows, and he nodded his head. Danger was inevitable, but even if it was dangerous, he still had to go. After all, he needed the immortal flame. Moreover, he had offended the Tong family in the immortal city. The Tong family would definitely not let go of the opportunity to enter the land of inheritance. It was impossible for the Lord Go to enter the land of inheritance with him. Thus, when the time came, the Tong family might really send people to make a move. If he met an existence on the level of Tong Mu, he might not be able to deal with it by himself. Thus, he really needed to prepare well. Mu Luer didn't force Bu Fong to stay. She only reminded Bu Fong before sending Bu Fong out of the Mu family's residence. There were no stars in the night sky of the immortal city. As Bu Fong walked on the official road, the two sides of the road were brightly lit. As he walked slowly, Bu Fong felt a little satisfied. The air was filled with the fragrance of all kinds of snacks, and it made Bu Fong feel refreshed. When he returned to the Heaven Chief restaurant, Bu Fong entered the kitchen and started his daily cooking practice. It was about time to start practicing the cutting immortal style. The cutting immortal style was a completely new knife technique. It was different from the Overlord 13 blades, as it only had one blade and one style. This blade and one style needed to condense all of Bu Fong's spirit, energy, and soul. It needed a huge amount of mental energy to activate it. With Bu Fong's mental energy that was comparable to a 2-star true immortal realm expert, he could only activate the cutting immortal style once. With regards to the power of this blade, Bu Fong was looking forward to it. Holding the dragon bone kitchen knife, Bu Fong's aura changed. His eyes became extremely sharp, and the mental energy in his spirit seemed to be boiling. All of his spirit, energy, and soul were gathered into this blade. Time passed. It had been almost a month since Bu Fong taught the naughty kids how to cook in the Mu family's mansion. During this month, Bu Fong had become the idol of this group of kids. When they looked at Bufong, their eyes were filled with admiration and fanaticism. Of course, they admired Bufong because of his cooking skills. As for fanaticism, it was because of the spicy strip in Bufong's hand. Speaking of spicy strips, they were really a delicacy with magical powers. The one who got the spicy strip for the first time was the crybaby Cece. Cece's cooking talent was really high. In less than 2 days, she had grasped the meteor knife technique that Bufong had taught her. It was also the first time that Bufong felt the amazing cooking talent of the aristocratic family's children. When Cece got the spicy strip, she curiously took a bite. This crybaby cried in an instant. It wasn't because it was too delicious, but because it was too spicy. However, this spiciness made Cece very excited, and she kept praising it. After eating one, she actually wanted to eat a second one. Hence, her performance was very good. The other naughty kids were also tempted by the spicy strip, and they all tried their best to show off. In just a short time, the children in the Immortal Becoming School improved rapidly. When Mu Luer started to test them, she was shocked by their improvement. She didn't dare to believe it. In just a short month, these children's cooking skills had actually reached the level of a middle-level chef. It should be known that the youngest among them, Cece, was only 6 years old. The way Mu Luer looked at Bufong was different. It was as if she was looking at a god. It turned out that Owner Bu had this kind of talent as a teacher. However, what Mu Luer didn't know was that while she was paying attention to the growth of the naughty kids' cooking skills, Bufong was concerned about which child's cooking talent was the highest. When the time came, he would be able to kidnap that child to become an apprentice at the Heaven Chief restaurant. If Mu Luer knew Bufong's plan, her face would probably darken. She would pick up a broom and chase after Bufong. She sincerely wanted Bufong to become a teacher, but Bufong actually wanted to kidnap the Mu family child. Owner Bu, in 2 days, the land of inheritance will open. You don't need to come and teach these 2 days. Go back and prepare well. Entering the land of inheritance is not a joke, Mu Luer solemnly said to Bufong. Bufong suddenly understood. So, a month had already passed unknowingly. During the day, he would open the restaurant for business, and at night, he would teach the naughty kids. When he came back, he would practice the cutting immortal style. This kind of life was quite comfortable. Even Bufong couldn't help but linger. Of course, if it wasn't for the immortal flame, Bufong really intended to continue living like this. Okay, I will come to the Mu family's residence in 2 days. Bufong nodded seriously. As the land of inheritance was about to open, the atmosphere in Immortal City had also become a little different. Every time the land of inheritance was about to open, the rarely seen Heaven Chief would come out. Even in the periphery, one could see many Heaven Chief. At this time, the people of Immortal City were excited because they could see many of the legendary Heaven Chief. The land of inheritance in the Heaven Chief realm was also divided into levels, and the Heaven Chief that entered were also different. For example, the land of inheritance this time was only a first-level one. Most of the people that entered were immortal chefs. This was because the things in the land of inheritance could not attract the second-level Heaven Chief, let alone the third-level Heaven Chief or the higher-level Qilin chefs. These high-level Heaven Chiefs' goal was naturally the second-level and third-level land of inheritance. This was because the resources they needed were different. Only the resources in the high-level land of inheritance could attract them. The teams of the aristocratic families were all preparing to enter the land of inheritance, waiting for it to open. In the Gongshu family's residence, the Heaven Chiefs team was already ready. More than 10 Heaven Chiefs were ready. Xinyuan Xiaohui and the other Heaven Chief were smiling and talking, their eyes flashing with excitement. The Tong family, the Zhang family, and the other family's Heaven Chiefs team were also waiting. At this moment, in the Mu family's Heaven Chiefs team, a man with a scar on his face frowned, looking at Mu Luer in front of him. Young Pavilion Master, what do you mean? If you're not a member of the Mu family's Heaven Chiefs team, how can you enter the land of inheritance? I joined the Mu family to be qualified to enter the land of inheritance. In the end, a kid who didn't join the Mu family can actually enter the land of inheritance. Young Pavilion Master, you're making trouble. The knife-scarred man said coldly. His words seemed to arouse the hatred of the Heaven Chief's team members. The others also looked at Mu Luder coldly. Mu Luder's face was a little pale. She had never thought that her family's Heaven Chief's team would actually not allow Bu Fong to join. They had agreed on it. Why? That's not what you said in front of my father. Mu Luer frowned and said. The knife-scarred man grinned, his eyes sweeping over Mu Luer. That's right. We agreed to the city lord. However, the city lord has now gone to the second layer of the Heaven Chief's world. Now, the one in charge is me, the captain of the Heaven Chief's team. I said no, so no. That mortal chef doesn't have the qualifications to enter the land of inheritance with us. The knife-scarred man said coldly. Mu Lunar's face paled. How could she explain this to owner Bu? Chapter 992. With a creaking sound, Bu Fong closed the restaurant's door. He specifically told Hades Era and the others not to cause trouble in the immortal city while he was going to the land of inheritance. Hades Era nodded with a spicy strip in his mouth, not showing any sincerity. After instructing them, Bu Fong left the restaurant. Shaking the vermilion robe on his body, he walked toward the inner circle of the immortal city. At the entrance of the inner circle, the experts guarding the gate were very familiar with Bu Fong. When they saw Bu Fong, they greeted Bu Fong from a distance. They also knew that today was the opening day of the land of inheritance. The Heaven Chief team, formed by the aristocratic families, was preparing to enter the land of inheritance, hoping to obtain resources and opportunities. After bidding farewell to the guards, Bu Fong continued to move forward. Walking on the spacious official road in the inner circle, the thick spiritual energy in the air seemed to become a little restless. In the distance, the giant immortal tree that seemed to blot out the sky, its luxuriant branches and leaves seemed to be gently rustling. It caused the spiritual energy in the immortal city to constantly fluctuate. In the sky, experts whistled past from time to time. These experts' auras were so powerful that Bu Fong couldn't help but squint his eyes. However, he didn't care too much. Soon, Bu Fong arrived at the Mu family's residence. He had basically come here every day for a month, so he was already very familiar with the place. However, this time, Bu Fong felt that the atmosphere was a little strange. He stepped into the Mu family's residence. People were coming and going, and everyone seemed to be busy. Bu Fong furrowed his brows. According to what Mu Luer had told him, it was the place where the Heaven Chief team would gather. However, as soon as he stepped into the area, Bu Fong furrowed his brows. Because in the distance, an ice-cold warship slowly floated up. This warship was engraved with mysterious patterns, which caused the warship to constantly bombard with spiritual energy fluctuations, urging it to fly. Bu Fong was a little bewildered. He knew that this was the Mu family's Heaven Chief team's warship. Why was it moving? Were they not going to wait for him? Bu Fong narrowed his eyes. He seemed to have a premonition. How can you do this? Mu Luer was enraged. She pointed at the warship that was already in the air and let out an angry roar. However, the warship didn't stop and ignored Mu Luer. At the bottom of the battleship, the four arrays blossomed with an extreme brilliance. Spiritual energy constantly rushed out from the arrays. At the front of the warship stood a tall and sturdy figure. It was the man with the scar on his face. The man also saw Bu Fong, and the corners of his mouth curled up into a sneer. Bu Fong's face was expressionless as he looked straight at the other party. Boom! With a rumble, the airwaves of the warship instantly exploded. Then, it turned into a stream of light and sped out of the immortal city. Meanwhile, in the inner area of the immortal city, there were warships floating in the air above the various aristocratic families. One by one, the battleships, like the Mu family's battleships, charged forward and flew out of the immortal city's inner circle. Bu Fong clasped his hands behind his back. His vermilion robe fluttered under the airwaves from the warship. His gaze indifferently looked at the warship that had turned into a streak of light and disappeared. Bu Fong gently exhaled. As expected, someone wanted to stir up trouble again. Bu Fong's mouth twitched. Mu Luer also saw Bu Fong. Looking at the corner of Bu Fong's mouth, she felt extremely embarrassed. After all, they were the ones who invited Bu Fong to the Mu family and promised to give Bu Fong a spot to enter the land of inheritance. But now, it was all the Tong family's doing. Mu Luer's heart was filled with resentment. The knife-scarred man was the captain of the Heaven Chiefs team. Before this, they had already discussed and agreed to allow him a spot. But now they suddenly changed their minds. There must be someone messing with them. And the only one who had a conflict with Bu Fong was the Tong family. Currently, the Tong family was afraid of the powerful black dog, so they didn't dare to directly make a move against Bu Fong. They actually chose to use such a despicable method. Mu Luer was so angry that she clenched her fists. Aristocratic families were really despicable. Owner Bu, Mu Luer looked at Bu Fong with guilt. She had to apologize to Bu Fong. This feeling of being abandoned was not good. Mu Luer was afraid that Bu Fong would hold a grudge against her. However, she was wrong. Bu Fong wasn't the kind of person who would hold a grudge easily. He had originally come to the Mu family for the system's strange mission. His main target was actually that group of brats. Joining the Heaven Chiefs team to enter the land of inheritance was just a side mission. Now that he was rejected and abandoned, Bu Fong didn't care too much. However, he was a little angry in his heart. It's okay. I will still go to the land of inheritance. Oh, since I can't go to the land of inheritance now, I will go and see those brats. You go and gather them. I have a mission to assign today, Bu Fong faintly said as he patted the vermilion robe on his body. Mu Luer froze, slightly dazed. However, Bu Fong was too lazy to answer Mu Luer's words. With his hands clasped behind his back, he turned around and walked in the direction of the immortal school. Owner Bu is really a godly person. Mu Luer was shocked. If she encountered such a thing, she would definitely be angry and want to fight with a knife-scar man. After all, cutting off the opportunity to enter the land of inheritance was equivalent to cutting off the opportunity to cultivate. This kind of hatred was definitely not small. However, how could Mu Luer know? Bu Fong had you, so the so-called land of inheritance was just like his house. He could go whenever he wanted. As for the knife-scarred man, Bu Fong naturally wouldn't be polite. He had already made a decision in his heart. This time, the knife-scarred man would definitely feel despair in the land of inheritance. When the brats saw Bu Fong, they weren't very happy. Instead, they all had drooping faces. Teacher Bu, shouldn't you be going to the land of inheritance? Why are you still torturing us brats? Musho said weakly. When he was punished by Bu Fong to swing his kitchen knife 1,000 times, the psychological shadow was still deeply engraved in his mind. Cece was very happy. She giggled and ran to Bu Fong's side. You don't welcome me? Bu Fong clasped his hands behind his back as he stood in front of the podium. Apart from Cece, the rest of the brats seemed to have not woken up yet. The brats all rolled their eyes in unison. Oh, originally, I wanted to teach you how to cook a dish, but since you don't welcome me, I'll let you practice your knife skills. The corners of Bu Fong's mouth twitched. However, his words made the brats' hair stand on end. Rumble. The 8 brats stood up from their seats in unison. Their faces were solemn as they bowed toward Bu Fong. They said in unison, Teacher Bu, you've worked hard. In the pavilion, Mu Luer, who was sitting on a chair and watching Bu Fong teach, suddenly felt her mouth twitch. This group of unruly brats was actually taught by Bu Fong to be so obedient. Were they still the Mu family's little devil kings? Very good. Everyone sit down, Bu Fong said. After all the brats sat down, Bu Fong's mind flickered, and the black turtle constellation walk appeared in front of him. Today, I'll teach you how to cook basic dishes and how to make egg fried rice. After teaching, you'll learn by yourself. When I return from the land of inheritance, I will test your proficiency in egg fried rice. At that time, the person who has the most proficiency will have an unexpected surprise. Bu Fong said. The brats' eyes instantly lit up, and they all started to chatter. They would definitely be surprised by Bu Fong's surprise. For example, the spicy strips and the hot pot. Every time this group of brats heard Bu Fong mention surprises, they would be extremely excited. Teacher Bu, Can you reveal some news to Cece first? Cece grinned, opening her cute eyes wide as she stared at Bufong. Bufong froze. Oh, this time, the surprise is that the person who has the most proficiency in egg fried rice can visit my restaurant. Of course, there will be delicious food, Bufong said. In the distance, Mu Luer listened. Why did she feel that something was wrong? However, she couldn't explain this strange feeling. She shook her head and didn't think about it anymore. The Mu family had just stood Bufong up, and Bufong still didn't care about the past and taught their students. What would be strange about it? Could it be that Bufong would kill a group of children? After completing the lesson, Bufong clasped his hands. Mu Luer respectfully sent him off as he left the Mu residence. Walking out of the Mu residence, Bufong stood at the entrance and slowly turned his head to look at the colossal Mu residence. Bufong gently exhaled. Then, he walked toward the periphery, intending to return to the Heaven Chief restaurant. As he walked, his face gradually became gloomy. The Mu residence's Heaven Chief team? It seemed like it was time to let them feel despair. When the guards in the inner circle saw Bufong, they were slightly stunned. Didn't Bufong go to the land of inheritance? Why did he come back? However, they still greeted him in a friendly manner. Bufong left the inner circle and quickly returned to the periphery. He walked to the entrance of the Heaven Chief restaurant. Hades Era and the Black Dragon King pulled 2 chairs and placed them in front of the restaurant. They closed their eyes and reclined on the chairs, bathing in the sunlight. All of a sudden, Hades Era's mind shook. His long eyelashes trembled as he opened his eyes. He saw Bufong's gloomy face. Instantly, he let out a soft cry of surprise. Returning to the restaurant, Bufong poured a cup of iced sour plum juice and drank a mouthful. Feeling the cool feeling flowing down his throat, he let out a long breath. Hades Era and the Black Dragon King also came back with chairs. They curiously looked at Bufong. They asked him what happened. Of course, Bufong didn't say that he was stood up. He only said that he was tactfully rejected. However, when Hades Era heard that, he instantly grinned and laughed. Bufong, young man, you also have this day. You were actually stood up. Bufong's face instantly darkened. Anyway, that Heaven Chief team is really pretentious. I need to teach them a lesson, Hades Era said as he rubbed his chin. Tap, tap, tap. Upstairs, a series of footsteps rang out. Then, Nethery's figure emerged from it. The cold and aloof wore a long black dress. Her fair and long legs were eye-catching, and her beautiful face made people unable to take their eyes off her. As soon as you appeared, her gaze fell on Bufong. Obviously, she had heard Bufong's words. Bufong's face was a little embarrassed. It's okay. Isn't it just going to the land of inheritance? This sister will protect you. You looked at Bufong's embarrassed appearance. Her red lips slightly curled up, and a smile appeared on her beautiful face. She was so beautiful that it shook people's souls. With the Netherworld ship, there was no land of inheritance that she couldn't go to. After all, she was a Netherworld woman who was exiled to the land of inheritance. Bufong looked at you, who was smiling so beautifully. He was a little absent-minded. Then, the corners of his mouth slightly curled up. He nodded his head and replied, Okay. Yu's long, black hair that reached her waist instantly fluttered. In the next instant, the Netherworld ship appeared in the air, emitting a vigorous nether energy. You stood on the deck of the Netherworld ship, indifferently looking at Bufong. Then let's go. Let's plunder everything. Yu's red lips slightly curled up as she said. Chapter 993. The Netherworld ship emitted dense nether energy, constantly bobbing up and down. Bufong looked at the Netherworld ship, and the corners of his mouth twitched. With you around, what kind of ruin couldn't he enter? The ruin was actually a kind of secret realm. Yu's Netherworld ship could pass through any secret realm. Bringing Bufong in would be a piece of cake. The Lord Go laid on the ground, yawning. He glanced at you and Bufong. Finally, he twitched his nose, and a gentle and magnetic voice rang out. Girl, the Lord Go will give you a piece of advice. It's best if you don't go to this ruin. The Lord Go's words made Bufong and you slightly freeze. Hades' era, who was holding a spicy strip in his mouth, couldn't help but furrow his brows. What did he mean? What did this mangy dog mean? You furrowed her brows, but in the end, her brows smoothed out. Her red lips slightly rose. It's okay. The secret realm is my home field, you said. Then, she looked at Bufong. Why aren't you getting on a ship? Bufong furrowed his brows, looking at the Lord Go. Did the Lord Go's words have a deeper meaning? Don't be afraid. I will accompany you. With I around, there won't be any accidents. Hades' era grinned. His figure flashed, and with a thud, he sat on the Netherworld ship. Hua looked at the Lord Go, then her small feet stomped on the ground. Her petite figure also landed on the Netherworld ship. Sitting on the bow, she grinned at you. Since my daughter is going, this Dragon King naturally has to go too. The Black Dragon King widened his eyes as he said. With a grunt, he was about to climb onto the Netherworld ship. However, just as he was lying on the deck of the Netherworld ship, you kicked his bald head. The Black Dragon King rolled on the ground with a dumbfounded expression. My Netherworld ship isn't something that anyone can board just because they want to. You coldly raised her chin and indifferently said. The Black Dragon King's face turned red and his eyes widened. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. Bufong walked to the underworld ship and sat on it, looking at the indignant Black Dragon King. You stay in the restaurant. As a waiter, you should look after the restaurant, Bufong said. Then, no matter how much the Black Dragon King refused, the Netherworld ship brought along a wave of spatial fluctuations as it scuttled into the void. Buzz, the void rippled like flowing water. In the end, it swallowed the Netherworld ship. Earth Prison, Netherworld in the boundless gray area, there was a huge rift valley that seemed to have been cut open by a huge blade. In the rift valley, there was a dilapidated palace. The muffled footsteps resounded. Then, a distant sound came from afar. With a creaking sound, the heavy metal door of the palace, which seemed to have been sealed for a long time, was slowly pushed open. Rustling dust fell from the sky. A white-haired child popped his head out. The child's eyes looked a little tired as he looked into the distance. There, black clouds surged over. Looking at those black clouds, the child's mouth opened and closed. The speed of those black clouds was extremely fast. Shortly, they landed in front of the palace. The black clouds scattered, revealing many figures. The aura on these figures was extremely terrifying. Vaguely, it seemed to distort the void. Boom, boom, boom. Heavy footsteps rang out as these people slowly walked toward the Bronze Palace. There were a lot of people, and there were 5 people in the lead. Each of them was wearing a black armor. One of them was an old man. His face was full of wrinkles, and he held a black magic staff that matched his black armor. Compared to the others, this old man's aura was very ordinary, as if he was just a mortal. Next to the old man was a handsome man with a sharp silver horn on his head. He carried a huge gourd on his back, and the corners of his mouth always held a smile that warmed people's hearts. And next to the old man was a hot-tempered man with a golden horn on his head. He looked like a titan, and his body was really tall. His upper body wasn't covered in armor, revealing his powerful body that was covered in tattoos. Blue veins bulged on his body. His veins twitched, causing his entire body to shake. There were 2 other women. One of them was standing beside Silverhorn. She had the face of a child, but her body was extremely hot. The armor on her body seemed to be unable to cover the magnificence of her chest, as if it was about to jump out. The woman's lips were pink, and her eyelids were deep, which was full of charm. Her hair was pink, reaching past her ears. She was charming, and she looked a little cute. The other woman was a woman with waist-length hair. Her face was cold, and her body was slender. Her face was extremely beautiful, and her aura was very strong. She carried a huge sword on her back. "Ah, little Tai, big sister sees you. Come out." The pink-faced woman saw Tai's head popping out, and her eyes brightened. He moved his long legs and appeared in front of old Tai as if he had teleported. Tai wanted to close the door, but it was too late. The woman raised her white palm, pressing against the door. Tai couldn't close it no matter how hard he tried. Eventually, he had to give up. Old Tai raised his head, the white hair on his head fluttering in the wind. His face revealed a somewhat innocent and pure expression. Prison overlords, why are you in the mood to come to the Hades Palace? Lord Hades is resting, and we shouldn't disturb him, Tai said with a smile. The pink-faced woman's red lips trembled slightly. Her hands pinched Tai's cheeks, and she started to squeeze them. Little Tai, it's not good for a child to lie, the woman said with a smile. Great sage Acheron said that Lord Hades went to his place and stole many things. Oh, really? No, Lord Hades has been eating and sleeping lately. He's been very obedient. Old Tai blinked his eyes, displaying an innocent and pure expression. All right, Luo Ji, let's go in and take a look. The old man in the lead suddenly opened his mouth. His hoarse voice rang out, causing the pink-haired woman, Luo Ji, to stick out her tongue. All right, I haven't seen Big Brother Hades for a long time. Prison overlords, you can't go in. Lord Hades is resting. Tai's figure came out from behind the door. He spread his arms, looking at the 5 experts anxiously. Boom, boom. Jin Jiao's ferocious face twitched. He took 2 steps forward, and the ground seemed to shake. He came in front of Tai. Then he reached out his big hand, lifting Tai, bringing him in front of him. Do you think a servant like you can stop us prison overlords? Lead the way. We want to see Lord Hades. We have something to ask him. Old Tai was on the verge of tears. He also wanted to know where His Majesty the Netherworld King had gone. He couldn't stop the 5 prison overlords. They were the 5 prison overlords of Earth Prison. They could be said to be the strongest. Each of them had a cultivation base that could be compared to Lord Hades. They were in charge of supervising Lord Hades' squeak. The door was pushed open. The 5 experts stepped in. Following behind the 5 experts were their respective subordinates. Their auras were also very powerful. Hades' palace was located in a deep crack in the valley, which was very deep. A group of people walked along the bronze path. Shortly after, they arrived in front of the palace. Stepping into the palace, a dignified figure sat cross-legged on the main seat of the palace. His face was tilted, so no one could see his appearance. You see, I told you that Lord Hades is resting. Don't disturb him. Tai smiled awkwardly. The old man holding the magic staff narrowed his eyes. A moment later, his eyes turned purple. Umph, you little kid, you dare to deceive us. Boom. The old man was enraged. The magic staff in his hand smashed on the ground. Instantly, the ground cracked. Buzz, a ball of purple light shot out from the magic staff, smashing toward the majestic figure on the high seat. Bang! That figure exploded instantly. The smiley face of a clown wobbled as it fell from the void. Tai looked embarrassed. At this moment, the air became quiet. Puffed. Worthy of being my big brother Hades. You love to stir up trouble. Looking at that smiling face, Luo Ji couldn't help but cover her mouth, laughing so hard that her entire body shook. As I expected, Hades ran out of Hades' palace again. The old man's heavy voice arose. Tai stood on the ground, huddling and shivering. He felt wronged. What would he do? He was also desperate. The old man didn't say anything. He held the black magic staff, standing at his spot. His eyes turned purple once again, and the purple light was like a massive vortex that spun unceasingly. A moment later, it poured into the old man's eyes. Hades went to the Heaven Chief Realm? What a restless lord. Luo Ji, Jin Jiao, you two go to the Heaven Chief Realm and bring Lord Hades back, said the old man. Luo Ji's face turned joyful. Really? Grandpa Long, can I really go? Jin Jiao, on the other hand, grinned with excitement in his eyes. You don't want to go? If you don't want to go, then let you Ji go, said the old man, glancing at Luo Ji. Luo Ji hastily waved her hand, forcing a smile. However, the excitement in her eyes didn't fade. Go. We will wait here for you guys. I have something to tell Lord Hades, said the old man. Jin Jiao nodded. Jin Jiao nodded. Luo Ji swayed her waist. Then, the two of them turned into a wisp of green smoke and disappeared. Buzz the void twisted. Then, A pitch-black netherworld ship emerged from the void. Thick nether energy revolved around it. On the netherworld ship, Bufong curiously looked around, and his eyes suddenly revealed a little bit of light. Is this the land of inheritance? This place has an immortal flame? In the distance, a massive metal warship was flying, releasing a terrifying aura. The void seemed to tremble. Those were the warships of the aristocratic families. Apparently, they had just finished traveling through the void and arrived at this land of inheritance. Bufong stood on the netherworld ship, looking down. Below, it was a massive world. It was a mountain range, but that mountain range looked like a massive lotus. Every petal of the blooming lotus had flowing lines on it. If one were to take a closer look at those lines, one would realize that they were actually gushing rivers. One by one, the mysterious patterns on the warships began to change, and they began to descend into the world below. You stood on the netherworld ship, tilting her head. Her eyes gazed at the Lotus Mountain range below, furrowing her brows. What a strange feeling. There seems to be something in this Lotus Mountain range that's attracting me. You said, what? Yu's words made Bufong a little bewildered. It's okay. If it's something that's attracting you, just take it. Bufong stood up, his vermilion robe flapping noisily in the strong wind. Now, what we need to do is to find the Mu family's Heaven Chiefs team's warship. If he goes back on his words, I will make him lose everything in this land of inheritance. Chapter 994. From a high altitude, this ruin looked like a giant lotus. This was a small world. Everyone landed on the outermost layer of the lotus petals. There seemed to be some kind of restriction in the center of the lotus, preventing the warships from landing. After the warships landed, they all stopped at the outermost layer of the lotus petals. From the warships, experts walked out one after another. This ruin didn't look big. Obviously, it was the place where the immortal chef obtained his fortuitous encounter. This part of the world was very hot. The ground beneath their feet constantly emitted a warm feeling. This feeling was very intense, as if there was some kind of flame surging underground. There is definitely an immortal flame here. Moreover, its level doesn't seem low. Perhaps it is a mid-grade immortal flame, one that can enter the top 100 of the immortal flames ranking. A heaven chief squatted down, one hand pressing on the ground. Feeling the majestic heat coming from the ground, his face revealed a slight smile. There were many immortal flames, but those that could enter the immortal flames ranking were considered extremely precious. The netherworld ship landed. The crowd did not disembark from the netherworld ship. Bufong sat at the bow, while Yu stood at the front. They surveyed this part of the world. Yu's gaze was fixed on the center of the ruin, and her eyes became extremely solemn. Hades' era held a spicy strip in his mouth. This was the first time his entire being became so solemn. What a strange feeling. Why do I feel a little uneasy? Hades' era rubbed the space between his brows. Then he bit down with his teeth, breaking the spicy strip. Yu's face was cold as she controlled the netherworld ship to move forward. As the netherworld ship could shuttle through the secret realm, you didn't need to leave the ship to move forward. However, Bufong didn't seem to want to stay on the netherworld ship forever. So, after saying goodbye to Nethery, he leaped into the air. His mind flickered. A magic array flashed around his body. In the next instant, the round-headed Xiao Bai emerged from the magic array. The metal wings on Xiao Bai's back opened with a clanging sound, filled with sharpness. Whoosh! Another figure appeared on the netherworld ship. That petite figure flipped in the air, then landed on Xiao Bai's head, narrowing her eyes. Boom! Xiao Bai landed on the ground with great momentum. It caused the surroundings to tremble violently. Hua smiled and held Xiao Bai's head. He opened his eyes wide and looked around curiously. Bufong landed on the ground, frowning as he surveyed his surroundings. The place where they landed should be closer to the center than the Heaven Chief's team. Bufong could almost hear the clamor of some Heaven Chief experts in the distance. Let's go. Bufong didn't say anything. He turned around and walked toward the center. This relic was not bad, and there were many spirit fruits that were suitable for transplanting into the heaven and earth farmland. Since the Mu family's Heaven Chiefs team didn't want him to enter the secret domain, Bufong wouldn't be polite. He went ahead and collected all the resources. Hua was an ancient divine beast, the seven-colored sky devouring python. Although she was still in her infancy, her perception of spirit items was much more sensitive than Bufong's. Hua jumped off Xiao Bai's head, then started to run wildly, running far away. Every time, she could find spirit materials filled with spirit energy. These spirit materials weren't bad. Naturally, Bufong didn't stand on ceremony. He swept them all, collecting them into the heaven and earth farmland. He didn't leave anything for the Heaven Chiefs team behind him. In the heaven and earth farmland, Nyohan-san looked at the spirit materials, knowing that Bufong was stirring up trouble again. Thus, he hurried to call the three-eyed wild lion, asking them to collect the spirit materials. Hua Hua ran wildly in the relic, running happily with a smile on her face. Occasionally, she would grab a spirit fruit and stuff it into her mouth, chewing loudly. The juice splashed everywhere, and the fragrance assailed his nostrils. Sometimes she would point into the distance, telling Bufong the location of the spirit materials. Bufong would go there and collect the spirit materials. Along the way, with this little girl, Bufong's speed of collecting spirit materials and treasures was much faster. Moreover, it was the kind where he searched thoroughly, leaving no treasures behind. Unfortunately, along the way, Bufong didn't find any immortal materials. Anyway, it was normal. Immortal materials were immortal materials, after all. Even on the heaven tree, they were quite rare, let alone in a relic. Thinking about it, the number of immortal materials in the relic was very small, and there must be a terrifying spirit beast protecting it. If he wanted to find it, he would have to rely on some luck. Bufong was happily collecting, but the Heaven Chiefs team behind him had a constipated look. The Lotus Relic had various landing spots. The Heaven Chiefs team from several aristocratic families naturally chose different landing spots. Of course, as the journey progressed, their goal was the center of the Lotus Relic, and they would eventually meet. However, they were able to find more resources in other places. The one who landed behind Bufong was none other than the Mu Residence's Heaven Chiefs team. Naturally, this was specially chosen by Bufong. After all, the one who rejected him was the Mu Residence's Heaven Chiefs team. As a narrow-minded chef, Bufong naturally wouldn't let their trip to the relic be comfortable. The Knife Scar Man's expression was somewhat gloomy and doubtful. As a veteran immortal chef who had experienced many trips to the relic, he naturally knew that other than immortal flames and immortal materials, there were also many spirit materials and treasures. To them, those spirit materials and treasures were their main harvest and resources. After all, the number of immortal materials and immortal flames was limited, and they usually appeared in the center. At that time, the various aristocratic families' Heaven Chiefs teams would compete for them. If they couldn't compete for them, those spirit materials and treasures would become their final harvest. However, how could it be? Along the way, there wasn't even a single spirit material. We didn't even see a spirit fruit. How could it be like this? The Knife Scar Man's mouth was trembling, and his face was incomparably gloomy. Could it be that he had come to a King fake relic? The Heaven Chiefs team behind the Knife Scar Man also lowered their heads, their faces ashen. Where were the promised resources? Where were the promised spirit materials and spirit fruits? Why didn't they see even a shadow? Swish! All of a sudden, their minds flickered. Looking in the distance, they saw a giant spirit beast passing through the weeds. The Knife-Scarred Man and the other Heaven Chief's eyes turned red. Finally, they found a spirit beast. Although its level didn't look high, it was at least a spirit material. Then, the many Heaven Chiefs team worked together to kill that spirit beast. However, what made them dumbfounded was that after that giant spirit beast was killed, it seemed to be leaking air. In the end, its giant body shrunk to the size of an arm. The Mu family's Heaven Chiefs team looked at each other in dismay. The Knife Scar Man was so angry that his mouth was trembling. After working for half a day with so many people, they had only found one spirit beast. In the end, this spirit beast was the kind that shrunk. The knife-scarred man's oppressive aura spread out, as if it wanted to attack the surroundings. The knife-scarred man's cultivation was not bad, reaching the 2-star true immortal realm. This kind of oppressive aura made many Heaven Chiefs' minds sink. All of a sudden, a sharp-eyed Heaven Chief saw a half-eaten spirit fruit. That spirit fruit had dense spirit energy and essence energy flowing out, causing the Heaven Chief's eyes to widen. He told this discovery to the knife-scarred man. The knife-scarred man's body shook. Grabbing the spirit fruit, his eyes revealed a fierce look. It seems like someone is purposely intercepting us, plundering all the spirit materials on our path. This is to make us leave empty-handed. The knife-scarred man clenched his teeth as he said this. His eyes seemed to have become red because of his anger. Along the way, the knife-scarred man's team found many spirit fruits and their shells. When they observed carefully, they realized that many places that should have grown spirit materials had lost their traces. Without a doubt, someone had gotten there first. Who is it? Could it be another family? The Gongshu family? The Zhang family? The knife-scar man felt a burst of anger in his heart, and he couldn't help but clench his fists. There was competition between the families, but didn't they say that each family would have their own path? Why did they still want to plunder the resources on their path? Advance at full speed. We must find the person who stole our resources. Those spirit materials belong to us. The knife-scar man's face was solemn as he shouted. In the next instant, the Mu family's Heaven Chiefs team gave up searching for spirit materials and advanced at full speed. Swish! Bufong picked up a spirit herb that looked like a chicken's claw. There were still bits of soil on its stem. This was a phoenix clawgrass. It was full of spirit energy. If it was used to stew soup, it could make the taste of the soup more delicious. It was a good spirit herb. Satisfied, he put this spirit herb into the heaven and earth farmland. Bufong stood up and looked into the distance. At this place, this path was almost at the end. If they continued forward, they would reach the center of the lotus land of inheritance. In the center, immortal herbs and immortal flames would appear, and the competition would become more intense. Boom! Boom! Bufong's mind moved, and he turned his head to look behind him. There, a terrifying aura was rapidly moving toward them. It was obvious that the Mu family's Heaven Chiefs team had also discovered the abnormality. At this moment, they were furiously advancing at full speed to find the culprit. Bufong looked in that direction, and the corners of his mouth slightly rose. He called the netherworld ship in the sky to descend. Yu and Hades' Era's eyes brightened as they got off the netherworld ship. Bufong took out the black turtle constellation wok and the dragon bone kitchen knife, preparing to cook. His mind flickered, and Bufong took out a spirit beast he had caught earlier from the heaven and earth farmland. This spirit beast's level wasn't low. It was about the same level as a spirit beast that had just entered the divine spirit realm. After Bufong finished processing, he cut the spirit beast meat into slices and used an iron fork to stab them. Opening his mouth, he spat out a dark gold heaven and earth obsidian flame, and the temperature instantly rose. The iron net was placed on the black turtle constellation wok. Placing the spirit beast meat on it, he began to roast it. Barbecuing in the wild was the most satisfying. In the distance, the Mu family's Heaven Chiefs team gradually arrived. The illusionary void trembled. Outside the immortal city of the first layer of the Heaven Chiefs realm, the illusionary void tore open, and two figures walked out of it. Luo Ji swayed her body, taking a deep breath. Instantly, her ample bosom heaved up and down fiercely. The air is really good. No wonder Big Brother Hades would come to the Heaven Chief's realm. The burly, giant-like Jin Jiao glanced indifferently at the distant immortal city. The Heaven Chief's realm also has experts. We're here to bring His Excellency Hades back. Don't cause trouble. The realm lord of the Heaven Chief's realm is really strong. Jin Jiao lowered his voice, his eyes extremely sharp. Hearing that, Luo Ji's pink lips twitched. She rolled her eyes. Do I look like the kind of person who would fight just because of a disagreement? The one who shouldn't cause trouble is you, Jin Jiao. Luo Ji was really unhappy. Jin Jiao, the most violent of the 5 Earth Prison Lords, the one who loved to fight the most, actually told her not to cause trouble. It was really funny, okay? Jin Jiao was too lazy to care about Luo Ji. He furrowed his brows, his golden horn faintly rippling with gold energy. Hades isn't in the immortal city, but His Excellency Ying Long said that Hades is in the first layer, so he should be there, Jin Jiao said. Luo Ji rolled her eyes at him. I finally know why His Excellency Ying Long sent me here. With a big fool like you, finding His Excellency Hades is as hard as ascending to the heavens. Luo Ji pouted. Then, her jade-like white wrist swung in the air. Instantly, the illusionary void was torn open. I'm His Excellency Hades' little fangirl. You won't go wrong if you follow me. A moment later, Luo Ji jumped into the torn illusionary void. That illusionary void crack led to the Lotus Land of Inheritance. Chapter 995. Sizzle. A wave of thick ash-gray smoke rose, accompanied by restless spirit energy and a rich fragrance. The fragrance seemed to turn into a long snake, spiraling in the air. Hua widened her triflower snake eyes, staring at the golden meat on the grill, which was dripping with oil. Saliva dripped from the corners of her mouth. Bufang had brushed a layer of sauce on the golden meat. Under the high temperature, the fragrance of the sauce spread, making it even more tempting to the taste buds. Sizzle. Bufang held 5 skewers of barbecued meat in one hand and patted them on the grill. Steam rose from the skewers, and every time it moved, the aroma would become stronger. The meat quality of this ingredient was really good. Bufang was a little surprised. As an ingredient for barbecued meat, it was indeed very suitable. It was fragrant and chewy. Bufang grabbed a skewer and took a bite. Immediately, a piece of meat on the skewer bounced up as if it was filled with elasticity and entered Bufang's mouth. Bufang chewed happily. The barbecued meat that had been brushed with a special sauce tasted really good. Let's eat, said Bufang. Hades Era and you, who had been waiting for a long time, couldn't wait anymore. Hua stretched out her small hand, grabbing a skewer and stuffing it into her mouth. Her mouth bulged, and her big eyes squinted. The corner of her mouth was stained with the reddish-brown sauce. A group of people sat on the ground, enjoying the delicious food. Hua knew that every time she went out with Bufang, she would be able to eat delicious food. It was the same when they went to the Endless Sea, and it was the same when they went to the Ancient Remnant. Hua decided that she would follow Bufang's footsteps in order to eat delicious food. In the distance, a powerful aura swept over at a rapid speed. The Mu family's Heaven Chiefs team was approaching at a fast speed. The leader was the leader of the Heaven Chiefs team, the knife-scarred man who had rejected Bufang. At this moment, the knife-scarred man's face was gloomy and his eyes were filled with anger. The muscles on his face were trembling, and the knife scar seemed to be twisting like a small snake because of the trembling of his muscles. Don't let me know who it is. Otherwise, even if it's the Gongshu clan, this daddy will still settle the score. The knife-scarred man was enraged. Suddenly, the group of Heaven Chief suddenly stopped moving. They twitched their noses and immediately smelled the aroma of barbecued meat lingering in the air. This smell. Why is there the smell of barbecue in this relic? The expression on the knife-scarred man's face trembled even more, and the anger in his heart surged even more. He felt that the other party was mocking them. They had plundered the resources that should have belonged to them, but in the end, they were mocking them with barbecued meat. The other party had gone too far. What kind of enmity was this? Full speed ahead. The knife-scarred man roared angrily. In the next instant, his figure shot out like a bolt of lightning in the air. His speed was extremely fast. After Bufang and the others finished their barbecued meat, Bufang put away the Black Turtle Constellation Walk. He also put away the Dragon Bone kitchen knife, and the group boarded the Netherworld ship. Hua ate to her heart's content. Rubbing her bulging little belly, a satisfied expression appeared on her face. She was also holding a spirit fruit in her hand, munching noisily. Every time she bit down, the juice would splatter. Hades' era was a little moved when he saw that. After eating the barbecued meat, he ate a juicy spirit fruit. It was simply too delicious. Paul was not stingy. On this trip, she had plundered a lot of spirit fruits. Thus, she didn't feel the pinch when she gave one to Hades' era. Paul was really obedient. She even took the initiative to give the spirit fruit to Bufong and Yu. The group sat on the Netherworld ship, munching noisily on the spirit fruit. Essence energy overflowed everywhere, and spirit energy soared to the sky. In the distance, a figure rapidly descended. Boom! It caused the ground to tremble. The smoke and dust dispersed. The knife-scarred man suddenly raised his head, his gaze fixed on the Netherworld ship in the sky. I finally found you. Which family's heaven chief are you? The knife-scarred man said coldly. However, halfway through his words, his entire person froze, and his eyeballs almost popped out. That was because on the Netherworld ship, it was not any family that he had imagined. It was a person that he had never thought of. Bufong, the mortal Bufong. The knife-scarred man's eyes shrank as he exclaimed in disbelief. The heaven chief around the knife-scarred man were also incomparably shocked. Obviously, they did not think that they would actually meet the mortal that they had rejected and abandoned in the land of inheritance. How could he enter the land of inheritance? No family would give him the right to enter the land of inheritance. The knife-scarred man clenched his fists, his gaze fierce. Bufong sat on the Netherworld ship, his legs gently swaying in the air. He expressionlessly looked at the group of people below. In his hand, he grabbed a fruit, expressionlessly taking a bite. The juice splattered everywhere, and the sound of crunching resounded continuously. In the next instant, Bufong finished eating the spirit fruit, and he casually threw the remaining core at the knife-scarred man. That core flew in the air, finally landing in front of the knife-scarred man. The fury in the knife-scarred man's heart soared to the heavens. These spirit fruits were supposed to belong to them, but in the end, this mortal beat them to it and plundered them all. After plundering, he still dared to ridicule them, a mortal that did not even have the right to enter the land of inheritance. At this moment, he was ridiculing him. You're courting death, the knife-scarred man angrily roared. However, the only response he got was fruit cores being thrown down from the Netherworld ship. There was even one that flew in a parabola, accurately hitting the knife-scarred man's head. It even bounced a little before falling to the ground. Perfect. In the end, I's aim is still better. You trash. Hades' era instantly laughed out loud. The knife-scarred man was so angry that he went crazy. The surrounding heaven chief could feel the knife-scarred man's body trembling. However, the Netherworld ship began to rumble, and a monstrous amount of nether energy circulated. In the end, with a ripping sound, it soared into the sky, heading toward the center of the Lotus Land of Inheritance. Its speed was extremely fast, and in an instant, it disappeared from everyone's sight. Chase! Chase for me! I must ruthlessly tear that mortal into pieces. The knife-scarred man angrily roared. The other heaven chief were a little hesitant, and they looked at the knife-scarred man with hesitation. Chief, that mortal is the one that completely annihilated the Tong family's Tong Mu's silver-armored army, one of the heaven chiefs said. The knife-scarred man instantly calmed down. That Lord Go is not here. What are we afraid of? Can you guys endure this? We've been looking forward to this trip for so long. Are we going to return empty-handed? The knife-scarred man asked coldly. The surrounding people also sighed helplessly. Of course, they couldn't endure it. Boom, boom. In the next instant, figures shot out like rockets, heading toward the center of the Lotus Land of Inheritance, chasing after the Netherworld ship. At this moment, Xianyuan Xiaohui was in a sorry state. His cultivation base wasn't considered strong. Among the many heaven chief, his cultivation base could be said to be at the bottom. Although he had become a heaven chief, his cultivation base hadn't reached the true immortal realm. As for the Gongshu family's heaven chief, they had all become heaven chief a few years ago, and their cultivation base had already reached the true immortal realm. Among them, the Heaven Chiefs team leader, Gongshu Ban, had reached the 2-star true immortal realm. Gongshu Ban was a genius of the Gongshu family, and his sister was like Tong Chung of the Tong family. Both of them were recognized as geniuses in cooking. The two of them were called the Gongshu family's two prides, and they had a high chance of reaching the 3rd grade Heaven Chief realm. It should be known that a 3rd grade Heaven Chief was already considered a top Heaven Chief in the Heaven Chief realm. Some families didn't even have a 3rd grade Heaven Chief to oversee them. The first layer of the Heaven Chief realm was a little behind the other 4 layers. This was because the immortal city built around the base of the Heaven Tree had fewer resources than the Heaven Chief realm. To a Heaven Chief, resources were very important. Without resources, even if one was talented, it would be hard to reach the peak. Gongshu Yun and Xianyuan Xiaohui had a good relationship. However, because of this relationship, Xianyuan Xiaohui had a hard time in the Gongshu family's Heaven Chief team. After all, many Heaven Chief hoped to become Gongshu Yun's other half. That way, they could get more resources from the Gongshu family. On this trip, because of his cultivation base, Xianyuan Xiaohui received the least resources. He only got a pitiful spirit fruit. Gongshu Yun had specially saved this spirit fruit for him. This made Xianyuan Xiaohui feel a little aggrieved. As they moved forward, the Gongshu family's Heaven Chief team quickly entered the center of the Lotus Land of Inheritance. As soon as they entered the center, the entire world seemed to have undergone an earth-shattering change. In the distance, a ball of flame rose, bearing its fangs and brandishing its claws. That flame, it was an immortal flame. When all the Heaven Chief saw that flame, their eyes widened, revealing a greedy look. To the Heaven Chief, an immortal flame was a very important resource. A good immortal flame could raise the Heaven Chief's cooking skill to another level. Xianyuan Xiaohui had an immortal flame, but his was just a low-grade immortal flame. However, the immortal flame in front of him seemed to have materialized, shooting up to the sky. At first glance, one could tell it wasn't ordinary. It was definitely an immortal flame that could enter the immortal flame ranking. Gongshu Ban wore an immortal robe, looking somewhat elegant. He clasped his hands behind his back, his eyes gazing at the blazing immortal flame that seemed to shoot up to the sky. His eyes were blazing with excitement. This seems to be the Golden Lotus Demonic Flame, ranked 59th on the Immortal Flame ranking. I didn't think that there would be such an immortal flame in this land of inheritance. Gongshu Ban's eyes seemed to have flames shooting out. The other immortal chefs also revealed looks of excitement. An immortal flame ranked in the top 100 of the Immortal Flame ranking. This kind of immortal flame was basically controlled by the 2nd grade Heaven Chief. Usually, the immortal chef didn't have any chance to come in contact with it. However, no one would have thought that there would be such an immortal flame in the Lotus Land of Inheritance this time. This was an opportunity. If one could control this flame, it was equal to obtaining the qualification to become a 2nd grade Heaven Chief. Boom! A loud explosion resounded. In the distance, the Golden Lotus Demonic Flame suddenly exploded. The flame was so bright that it seemed to have turned into a scorching sun, dazzling everyone's eyes. Roar! 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 At the same time, the entire space was filled with ear-splitting roars of beasts. The eyes of the Heaven Chief, who had reached the center of the area, instantly shrank. Around the Golden Lotus Demonic Flame, waves of majestic spirit energy spread out. The immortal energy was like a pillar, shooting up into the sky. There were 5 strands of immortal energy, which seemed to support this part of the world. The Tong family, the Zhang family, the Gongshu family, and the members of the Mu family's Heaven Chiefs team all took in a breath of cold air. The immortal ingredients that had never appeared on the road of lotus petals actually appeared at this moment. This time, the land of inheritance was really going to have a big harvest. The immortal energy of the immortal ingredients was so thick that it was about to turn into a real pillar. The immortal flame was the Golden Lotus Demonic Flame, ranked 59th on the Immortal Flame ranking. This land of inheritance was simply a heavenly paradise. The eyes of the immortal chefs had a blazing look on their faces. In their eyes, there was only the immortal ingredients and the immortal flames. As for the ferocious beasts guarding the immortal ingredients, they were all ignored by the immortal chefs. In the sky, the netherworld ship floated up and down. Bufong stood in front of the ship, his eyes excitedly staring at the golden lotus demonic flame in the distance. In his mind, the system's introduction of the golden lotus demonic flame resounded. The immortal flame ranked 59th on the immortal flame ranking. Compared to the heaven and earth obsidian flame he controlled, it was countless times stronger. The two of them were like heaven and earth. However, when Hades era and you stared at the immortal flame, their faces became much more serious. Bufong was bewildered. A moment later, he furrowed his brows, because inside the immortal flame, there were actually streams of light shooting up into the sky. There were kitchen knives, spirit pots, stoves, and all kinds of cooking utensils. Wrapped in immortal energy, they surged out of the immortal flame like a surging tide. Waves of immortal tools. At this moment, the Heaven Chief's eyes were completely red. Chapter 996. Immortal Fire, Immortal Materials, Immortal Tools. At this moment, all the Heaven Chief in the Lotus Ruins were boiling with excitement. This was the first time they had seen such a spectacular scene. It was already good enough for immortal materials and immortal flames to appear in ordinary ruins, let alone immortal flames on the Immortal Fire ranking. Most importantly, there were also immortal tools. Usually, only second-grade ruins would have all three of them. The relic this time was actually comparable to a second-grade relic. This was a great opportunity. All the Heaven Chief team's Heaven Chief felt incomparably excited. Every single one of them couldn't contain their excitement as their bodies trembled with excitement, even though there were still many powerful beasts in front of them. However, this was no longer important. The knife-scarred man's eyes widened and were filled with a bright light. This was really a glimmer of hope at the darkest hour. 5 portions of immortal materials. This meant that their Mu clan would definitely have a chance to obtain 1 portion. The Immortal Fire that was ranked 59th on the Immortal Fire list made his greed explode. The immortal tools fluttering in the sky made him extremely excited. The spiritual materials and spiritual herbs that had been plundered by Bufong were no longer important. If he could obtain a celestial ingredient, it would be thousands of times better than those spiritual ingredients and spiritual medicines. If he could obtain a celestial flame, it would be a truly great opportunity. He, the knife-scarred man, could even use this opportunity to become a second-grade Heaven Chief. It wasn't just the knife-scarred man. At this moment, all the Heaven Chief were overwhelmed with emotions. This relic was really an opportunity that belonged to them. Roar! Roar! Deafening beast roars resounded endlessly as they soared into the sky, causing the entire space to violently tremble. At this moment, all the Heaven Chief's eyes, which were attracted by the immortal fire and immortal materials, came back to their senses and noticed the ferocious beasts. There weren't many of these beasts. Every immortal material was guarded by a ferocious beast. This made the Heaven Chief even more confident. If it was only a ferocious beast, then all of them should be able to join forces to kill it and obtain the immortal materials. The golden lotus demonic flame was in the middle, burning fiercely. It was a dazzling gold like a burning sun. From time to time, immortal tools poured out from the immortal fire. These immortal tools were wrapped in immortal chi and constantly circulated. Gongshu Ban stood in a corner. No one knew when the wind started to blow in this area. The wind was so strong that it fluttered people's long robes. Gongshu Yin moved closer to Gongshu Ban. Her beautiful face looked solemn. Big brother, there must be something fishy about this. It's impossible for a grade 1 ruin to have immortal tools, immortal fire, and immortal materials at the same time. I know. That's why I let the others explore the way first. No matter what, this golden lotus demonic flame will belong to me." Gong Shuban's face was calm, but his eyes were blazing with passion. The golden lotus demonic flame would help him become a second grade heaven chief celestial flame. It could even help him become a third grade heaven chief. However, Gong Shuban was very cautious. What Gong Shuyan said was right. There must be something strange. The immortal materials, immortal flames, and immortal tools all appeared at the same time in a second-level vestige. For a grade, one ruin to have such a situation, there must be something strange. All of a sudden, Gong Shuban turned his head to look in the distance. There, the Tong family's heaven chief couldn't hold back anymore and made his move. These people roared as they charged forward. Their figures seemed to turn into shooting lights as they dashed toward the immortal energy spirit pillar released by the immortal materials. Roar! A spirit beast's roar resounded. The terrifying fluctuations immediately began to tremble. Everyone's mind trembled at this moment. Then, many of the Tong family's heaven chief who had charged out froze in the next instant. The giant spirit beast swung its claws, ruthlessly smashing down. Puff! With a loud explosion, the two Tong family's heaven chief exploded under this spirit beast's claws. The smell of blood instantly filled the entire world. Swoosh! In an instant, all the heaven chief sucked in a breath of cold air. At this moment, they finally recovered from their daze of the immortal materials and immortal flames. This savage beast guarding the immortal materials was so savage. The Tong family was facing a savage wolf-type savage beast. Its tyrannical aura, terrifying energy, malevolent fangs, and majestic body were enough to make people's minds tremble. After killing two heaven chief with a single claw, this wolf-type savage beast seemed to be stimulated by the fresh blood, and its ferocious roar reached the heavens. Its voice shook the entire heaven and earth. Following the wolf-type savage beast's roar, the other savage beasts also let out roars. The experts of the various aristocratic families all became solemn. The netherworld ship floated in the air. Bufong landed in the direction of the fifth immortal material. The various aristocratic families divided one path, and he chose the last one. Bufong stepped on the air, slowly moving forward. Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes flashed. Following beside him, lightning arcs danced in his mechanical eyes. Boom! The ground shook, and Xiao Bai landed on the ground. Bufong, on the other hand, stood beside him with his hands clasped behind his back. Looking up, Bufong did not pay attention to the immortal materials. Instead, he paid attention to the savage beast guarding the immortal materials in the distance. Different from the savage beasts the Tong family encountered, the savage beasts on each path seemed to be different. In front of Bufong was a giant snake sticking out its forked tongue. The scales on the giant snake's body were glistening, dazzling, and eye-catching. As the pitch-black forked tongue spat out, the air seemed to be filled with a dense, fishy smell. This was actually a snake-type savage beast. In the distance, the scarred man naturally saw Bufong. He did not expect Bufong to actually dare to choose a path by himself. One must know that from the situation of that savage wolf swatting two heaven chief to death with one claw, that savage beast should be a 2-star beast emperor level existence. Beast emperors were actually equivalent to the human true god realm. Every beast emperor actually had spiritual intelligence. They guarded the immortal materials in order to borrow the surging immortal energy within the immortal materials to cultivate. With Bufong's cultivation, he actually wanted to fight against the Beast Emperor and obtain the immortal materials. It was simply wishful thinking. Even with the help of the Earth Immortal Puppet, it was impossible for him to obtain the immortal materials. The scarred man sneered coldly as he looked at Bufong. He was really looking forward to the scene of Bufong being torn apart by the Beast Emperor. Of course, the Mu family's Heaven Chiefs team was also facing a Beast Emperor. That oppressive aura made the blood in his entire body tremble. Buzz spirit talismans appeared in the hands of the Heaven Chief. Since they came to explore the relic, how could they not be prepared? These spirit talismans were their preparation. Buzz, buzz, waves of trembling. Each immortal chef had an Earth immortal puppet appear by his side. These Earth immortal puppets' eyes were bloodshot. Under the Heaven Chief's control, they all rushed towards the Beast Emperor. At the same time, the Heaven Chief crushed the spirit talismans. Waves of energy vibrated in the air. From the bodies of the Earth immortal puppets, a powdery substance floated out majestically. The Beast Emperors roared angrily. Terrifying spirit energy vibrated around their bodies, as if they wanted to shake off the powder. However, the powder was like maggots in a tarsal bone. It couldn't be broken at all. Following the exploding spirit energy of the Beast Emperors, it drilled into their bodies. The Earth immortal puppets seized the chance to fight against the Beast Emperors. Of course, it was a one-sided battle. The Earth immortal puppets were all slaughtered by the Beast Emperors. However, when each Earth immortal puppet exploded, its body exploded into a majestic powder that wrapped around the Beast Emperors. Very quickly, the Beast Emperors had completely absorbed the powder. The Heaven Chief of each aristocratic family used the same method to deal with the Beast Emperors, with the enchanting dragon powder. Even if these beasts are Beast Emperors, so what? They are still at our mercy. Ha ha ha. The Heaven Chief of the aristocratic families burst out laughing. Boom, boom. The ground trembled. The Beast Emperors guarding the immortal materials fell to the ground, falling into a deep sleep. They couldn't resist the Heaven Chief at all, and the immortal material behind the Beast Emperors was finally exposed in front of them. It was a lotus seed-shaped immortal material. It looked like a water droplet, transparent like glass. Immortal energy surged within it, and in the center of the lotus seed, there was a flame burning fiercely. This is the 10,000-year flame heart lotus seed. It's an incomparably rare, immortal material. I didn't think that it would appear in this relic. Oh my God, if we can get this immortal material, becoming a second great Heaven Chief won't be a problem. If we eat this immortal material, it can let a true immortal realm expert advance by a small realm. The Heaven Chief were completely shocked. They couldn't stay calm. Even Gong Shu Ban, who had always been calm, couldn't help but be moved. The 10,000-year flame heart lotus seed, 5 seeds born together are one. No wonder 5 immortal materials appeared at the same time. This immortal material is a set. If we can gather all of them, even a third great Heaven Chief would be tempted. Gong Shu Ban's knowledge was extraordinary. He stuck out his tongue and licked his dry lips. Gong Shu Yun's eyes were fiery. Brother, what are we waiting for? Let's do it. However, Gong Shu Ban still held back and said, no rush. Let the others go first. Xin Yuan Xiaohui looked at Gong Shu Ban with some admiration. He was indeed the proud son of heaven of the Gong Shu family. He was indeed extraordinary. How could an ordinary person remain calm in the face of such temptation? He, Xin Yuan Xiaohui, knew that his cultivation wasn't enough, so he didn't step into this muddy water. One by one, the Heaven Chief charged towards the Beast Emperors. Their target was the 10,000-year flame heart lotus seed behind the Beast Emperors. Everyone revealed greed. The knife-scarred man's face was full of excitement. He rushed to the front, his eyes incomparably greedy. Suddenly, each of the Heaven Chief's bodies involuntarily trembled. They turned around in disbelief. What they saw was the eyes of the Beast Emperor, who was supposed to be unconscious. Those eyes were filled with ridicule and tyranny. A beast roar rang out, causing many of the Heaven Chief's hearts to tremble. In the next instant, the Beast Emperor attacked. Blood splattered everywhere. Bufong looked at the huge, snake-type spirit beast in the distance, his brows furrowing. Naturally, he didn't have the enchanting dragon powder that the other Heaven Chief had. Thus, he was having a headache thinking of how to deal with this Beast Emperor. Xiao Bai stared at the Beast Emperor. With a clang, his metal wings spread open. In the next instant, the primal chaos in his abdomen revolved. The war god's stick, which was flashing with lightning arcs, fell into his hand. Holding the war god's stick in one hand, Xiao Bai slightly raised his chin, his aura soaring. After eating countless lightning strikes, Xiaobai could already fight against a 2-star true immortal realm expert. Facing the Beast Emperor, he wasn't afraid at all. However, just as Xiaobai was about to fight the Beast Emperor, the netherworld ship let out a swishing sound. Then Hua's body descended, landing on Xiaobai's head. He hugged his head, giggling. In the distance, the snake-type Beast Emperor stuck out its forked tongue, blinking its eyes. Xiaobai was a little bewildered. His soaring aura stagnated. He didn't know if he should attack or not. Swoosh! Hua jumped down from Xiaobai's head. His small feet stomped on the ground, running happily toward the huge, snake-type Beast Emperor. The Beast Emperor stuck out its forked tongue, opening its mouth, letting out a roar that reeked of blood. The wind surged, and Hua was blown away, landing on his butt. Bufang's mouth twitched. Was this Uncle Hua here to make a joke? All of a sudden, Bufang was bewildered. In the distance, Hua, who was sitting on the ground, seemed a little angry. His eyes widened, and his pupils spun. His triflower snake eyes instantly shot out a green radiance. In the next instant, the snake-type Beast Emperor was dumbfounded, looking at the two-colored giant python that had suddenly become so huge that it covered the sky. The powerful pressure of a superior being burst out from the giant python's body. The ancient divine beast, the seven-colored sky-devouring python, stared at the snake-type Beast Emperor with its green eyes. It opened its mouth, letting out a hum. In the sky, Hades Era, who was sitting on the netherworld ship, laughed loudly with a spicy strip in his mouth. Wah! This pure child has been hanging out with a rotten dog for too long. He actually learned to pretend to be a pig to eat a tiger. Look at how scared that little snake is. The corners of Yu's mouth couldn't help but twitch. All of a sudden, Hades' laughter suddenly stopped. He furrowed his brows, his face solemn as he looked into the distance. His pitch-black pupils seemed to be able to pierce through the void. Yu was bewildered, looking at him with a puzzled expression. Hades Era held the spicy strip in his mouth, showing a rare, solemn expression. Little sister Nethery, they're here. You have to find a place to hide. Chapter 997. Rumble. The space became hotter and hotter. The golden lotus demonic flame continued to burn. Immortal tools shot out from within and flew everywhere. The Heaven Chiefs team from the aristocratic families all felt their hairs stand on end because they discovered that the mystifying dragon powder they used was ineffective against these beast kings. The beast emperors, who should have been on the ground, suddenly jumped up and started attacking. Roar! The roar was deafening. In the next moment, a terrifying aura erupted. The Heaven Chief elders, who were initially attracted by the immortal materials and immortal flames, immediately looked at the Beast Emperor in horror. Buzz! The atmosphere was not right. The Heaven Chief quickly took out the kitchen knives in their hands. To be able to become Heaven Chief, their kitchen knives were naturally extraordinary. He waved his hand, stirring up blade energy, and slashed at the Beast Kings. However, when the cleavers landed on the Beast Emperor's bodies, they couldn't break through their defenses. A claw swept out. One by one, the heads of the Heaven Chief exploded and turned into a cloud of blood mist. The knife-scarred man retreated, his legs trembling. The ferocity of the Beast King was beyond his expectations. The scarred man turned his head and saw Gongshu Ban in the distance. Gongshu Ban looked elegant. The wind blew his hair, making him turn his head and smile at the scarred man. Had Gongshu Ban predicted that the mystifying dragon powder wouldn't work on these beast kings? The scarred man's heart skipped a beat. As expected of the prodigy of the Gongshu clan, he was indeed powerful. The Tong family also had a Heaven Chief who escaped and was in a sorry state. These beast emperors were still 2-star beast emperors, but they were different from ordinary 2-star beast emperors. These beast emperors had incomparably strong defense, and their strength was also much stronger than ordinary beast emperors. It should be because of the immortal fire and immortal ingredients. These ferocious beasts stay here all year round. After being nourished by the 10,000-year flame heart lotus seeds, spirit chi, their bodies have undergone a subtle change. Furthermore, With the immortal fires roasting, their resistance and defense have greatly increased. That's why the mystifying dragon powder is useless. Gongshu Ban's eyes focused as he opened his mouth. The knife scar man looked as if he was constipated. He didn't think that it was because of this that they couldn't deal with the Beast Emperor. Damn it! Is there no way to kill these beasts? The knife-scarred man was furious. Gongshu Ban kept silent. His eyes twinkled as he stared at the Beast Emperor, who was roaring and killing the Heaven Chief with one claw. The corners of his mouth twitched. The knife-scar man seemed to have thought of something and turned to look at Bufang. Their aristocratic families had suffered such heavy losses. That mortal chef was probably already a pile of minced meat by now. The knife-scarred man smirked. He looked at Bufang with a mocking expression. However, his pupils constricted and the mocking expression on his face froze. The scene he had imagined did not appear. Bufang wasn't smashed into minced meat by the Beast King either. The style of the scene seemed to be out of the knife-scarred man's expectations. Because, at this moment, Bufang actually stretched out his hand and gently stroked the head of the savage, snake-type Beast King. How is this possible? He was well aware of how terrifying and violent these Beast Emperors were. Many Heaven Chief had died here, and the air was filled with the stench of blood. It was so thick that people wanted to vomit. However, the mortal Bufang style was so warm. Warm your sister. Could it be that the path that the mortal chose wasn't as fierce as the Beast Emperor's? The knife-scarred man's eyes twinkled. The more he thought about it, the more he felt it made sense. The Beast Emperors they had encountered were extremely ferocious. The ruthlessness in their eyes was so thick that it made people shiver. However, the big snake that Bufang was facing had closed its eyes comfortably, letting Bufang stroke it. How could the difference between beasts be so big? Because of the knife-scarred man's muttering, Gongshu Ban couldn't help but look in Bufang's direction. His heart skipped a beat when he saw what it was. It's owner Bu. He actually came to the land of inheritance. When Xinyuan Xiaohui saw Bufang, she was a little surprised. She stared at Bufang in disbelief. And looking at Bufang's posture, he didn't seem to have joined the aristocratic family's Heaven Chief team. Could it be that he entered the land of inheritance by himself? How did he enter the land of inheritance by himself? Unbelievable. Interesting. Gongshu Ban looked at the Beast Emperor that was like a docile kitten, his eyes narrowing. He had a different opinion from the knife-scar man. He didn't think that the Beast Emperors of Bufang's path were docile. Bufang must have used some method that they didn't understand. Suddenly, Bufang moved. After stroking the snake-type Beast Emperor's head, he put his hands behind his back and casually walked behind the Beast Emperor. His target was the 10,000-year fire heart lotus seed that was spewing immortal energy. The knife-scarred man's eyes narrowed. In the next instant, a ruthless look appeared in his eyes. Damn it, how can I let you get the immortal ingredient? He made a decision in his heart. True energy gushed out from the knife-scarred man's feet. His figure shot out like a rocket, charging toward Bufang at lightning speed. Since the Beast Emperor was docile to Bufang, it would definitely be docile to him as well. The immortal ingredient was his, and the immortal flame had to be his as well. As if feeling the movement behind him, Bufang's brows instantly furrowed. Then he turned his head to look behind him and saw the knife-scarred man madly charging toward him. The knife-scarred man's eyes were filled with greed. He stared fixedly at Bufang. Bufang looked at the knife-scarred man, the corners of his mouth slightly curling. Idiot, Bufang lightly said. In the next instant, the knife-scarred man who was charging forward suddenly stopped. Roar! The snake-type Beast Emperor roared. With a swing of its tail, it instantly struck the knife-scarred man's body. The knife-scarred man never thought that the Beast Emperor, which was so docile to Bufang, would suddenly explode. His entire body was whipped and sent flying backward. Hua narrowed her eyes. As a seven-colored sky devouring python, she had a natural suppression against snake-type creatures. Although this snake-type Beast Emperor wasn't ordinary, after Hua revealed her identity, it chose to submit. Beat him hard. Hua squinted her eyes, clenching her small fists as she grunted. The snake-type beast emperor became more and more violent as it fought. It attacked the knife-scarred man viciously. The knife-scarred man was a little dumbfounded. He didn't think that he would actually suffer an even fiercer attack from a beast emperor. He coughed out blood, his face pale. Bufong, calling him an idiot, had almost made the knife-scarred man vomit blood. Ignoring the knife-scarred man, Bufong turned around and walked toward the immortal ingredient that was emitting immortal energy. Gongshu Ban's eyes shrank. He knew that he couldn't wait any longer. Thus, he finally made his move. Light flashed in his hand, and a purple kitchen knife appeared in his hand. It was an immortal tool, with thick immortal energy winding around it. At the same time, the elegant Gongshu Ban dashed out like lightning. His feet stepped on the ground as he dashed toward the Beast Emperor. His body was as weak as lightning. In just a blink of an eye, he disappeared from his spot. The Beast Emperor roared, swiping its paw. However, its paw only hit air. Gongshu Ban's body moved quickly, moving to the next position. Then, what filled everyone's eyes was a thick purple light. The kitchen knife slashed the Beast Emperor's body, creating a rain of blood. So powerful. Xin Yuan Xiaohui gawked and dropped her jaw, instinctively praising. Of course, my brother is powerful. He's the one who has the highest chance of becoming a Qilin chef in the family. Gongshu Yun said proudly, looking at the flying figure in the distance. Xin Yuan Xiaohui nodded. Gongshu Ban was really powerful. Only after meeting him would she know how calm and terrifying he was. Boom! The massive Beast Emperor had many wounds on its body. Blood splashed, and it swayed unceasingly. Gongshu Ban stood at his spot, twirling the kitchen knife in his hand. After twirling it, he raised his hand. The Beast Emperor's head drooped. Eventually, Gongshu Ban's finger touched its glabella. There was a loud bang. The incomparably powerful Beast Emperor, who had slapped many Heaven Chief Beast Emperor to death, fell to the ground. Panting, it was on the verge of death. Little Yin, take this Beast Emperor. After the immortal flames baptism and the immortal ingredients, this Beast Emperor is a good cooking ingredient. We can't waste it. Gongshu Ban used a white cloth to wipe the blood off the knife. Then, he turned to Gongshu Yun, who was behind him. A moment later, he lifted his feet, heading toward the immortal ingredients. Swish! The void shattered. Two figures instantly stepped on the void, flying out. Their burly bodies were filled with terrifying power. Their bulging muscles were engraved with mysterious patterns. The golden horns on their heads seemed to have black nether energy twirling around them. Wow! A world of lotuses. So beautiful. Luo Ji wore a full set of black armor. Although it was just armor, it accentuated her voluptuous body. What a thick aura. Hades is in this world. Jin Jiao's focus was different from Luo Ji's. His eyes moved, and he took a deep breath. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth was sucked into his mouth like a whale. Look over there. Luo Ji pointed in the distance. There, the flame shot up to the sky, and the immortal energy was like a column. Immortal flame? Jin Jiao said casually. Facing the immortal flame, his face didn't change. You're really stupid. If you were half as smart as Yin Jiao, you could really ascend to the heavens. Luo Ji rolled her eyes at Jin Jiao. Then, her eyes turned purple, gazing at the immortal flame. That immortal flame is strange. It seems to be hiding something. Jin Jiao frowned, exhaling a mouthful of air. Who cares what's strange about it? Just smash it with one punch, Jin Jiao said casually. A moment later, he stepped out, heading toward the immortal flame. Luo Ji looked at Jin Jiao's disappearing figure, speechless. Your head is filled with rocks. You don't know how to have fun. Luo Ji snorted. Her waist swayed as she took elegant steps, following Jin Jiao. On the Netherworld ship, you looked at Hades' era suspiciously. Hide? What do I need to hide? You asked coldly. Hades' era's eyes gazed into the distance. With half a spicy strip dangling from the corner of his mouth, he looked somewhat solemn. Listen to I. It's not wrong. You furrowed her beautiful brows, but her figure didn't move. Hades' Era looked at you, sighing deeply. It's too late. You was bewildered. She turned, looking into the distance. In the distant sky, there were actually two figures slowly approaching. One was a golden-horned giant, as big as a small mountain, and the other was a pink-haired woman with a childlike face and an extremely hot body. Looking at these two, Yu's eyes shrank. Earth Prison's overlord. Now you know why I told you to hide, Hades' Era sighed. He finally knew why that mangy dog told you not to come to this land of inheritance. He didn't think that the Earth Prison's overlord would appear here. Scratching his head, Hades' Era felt a little troubled. These two weren't like those hell emissaries, who could be bribed with a few spicy strips. Moreover, looking at Luo Ji, standing by Jin Jiao, Hades' Era's face twitched. Why did this woman come here? Clatter, clatter. Bufong strode forward. The wild wind carried immortal energy, constantly attacking his figure. The velvet rope that tied his hair had already snapped, and his hair fluttered. Bufong didn't stop, continuing to walk forward. Soon, he arrived at the place where the immortal energy came from. He raised his head to look at the floating 10,000-year flame, heart lotus seed. In the distance, Gongshu Ban also stopped, turning his head to look at Bufong. Bufong instinctively looked over. Their gazes collided in the air. Chapter 998. Gongshu Ban's and Bufong's gazes collided in the air. There was no tit for tat, no dazzling sharpness. Bufong expressionlessly nodded, while Gongshu Ban smiled gently. Then, the two of them tacitly turned their heads at the same time, their gazes falling on the 10,000-year flame heart lotus seed that was spewing immortal energy. This was an immortal ingredient. Even on the heaven tree, it was an extremely precious immortal ingredient. Bufong might not know how precious this ingredient was. However, Gongshu Ban was the proud son of heaven of the Gongshu family. He was known as the genius with the most hope of becoming the next Qilin chef. How could he not know how precious this ingredient was? The lotus seed was like a transparent water droplet, wrapped in immortal energy, slowly spun. At the heart of the lotus was a wisp of golden flame, somewhat similar to the golden lotus demonic flame. Raising his head, he stared at the lotus seed. Even Gongshu Ban's calm heart couldn't help but be stirred. It's really too beautiful, Gongshu Ban said, intoxicated. Then, he continued to walk forward. He reached out his hand, wanting to grab the lotus seed. However, that lotus seed was wrapped in wild immortal energy. It seemed impossible for him to touch it. Boom! Boom! The immortal energy seemed to turn into a sharp blade. When Gongshu Ban's finger touched it, he immediately retracted it, as though he had been electrocuted. He raised his hand, frowning as he looked at his finger. On it, there was a small cut on his finger, and a trace of dark red actually flowed out. He sucked in a breath of cold air. This immortal energy had actually turned into a blade. It was so terrifying. This time, he really had a headache. How should he extract the 10,000-year flame heart lotus seed from that immortal energy? Gongshu Ban furrowed his brows. He couldn't figure it out, so he turned his head to look into the distance. He wanted to see how that mortal would solve this. Bufong had indeed encountered the same problem as Gongshu Ban. It looked very beautiful, but under its beautiful appearance, there was a sharpness that made one's hair stand on end. Bufong looked at the lotus seed and then at the vigorous flame behind it. The golden flames were dazzling and eye-catching, and immortal tools kept flying out of them. The immortal tool was also wrapped in immortal energy. How can immortal energy become as sharp as a blade? Bufong was puzzled. According to the system's description of immortal energy should be similar to spiritual energy. He couldn't help but ask the system for the reason. Although the system was stingy, it was not very reliable at times. But as an encyclopedia, he was qualified. Ownerless immortal chi is like spiritual chi. Ownerless immortal chi is like spiritual chi. Ownerless immortal chi will become sharp and possess killing power due to the will of the controller. The system's serious voice resounded in Bufong's mind. Bufong's eyes couldn't help but narrow. Immortal Qi with an owner? Bufong asked the system in astonishment. Isn't this a relic? How could this immortal energy have an owner? But the system couldn't possibly make a wrong judgment. Just as Bufong said, as an encyclopedia, the system was very qualified. The 10,000-year flame, heart lotus seed, is wrapped in ownerless immortal Qi. Bufong muttered. Then his eyes became sharp as he looked at the immortal flame that was constantly spewing out immortal tools. The immortal flame spewing out immortal tools was already very strange. Adding on the immortal energy that had an owner, Bufong took a deep breath. Then the expression on his face turned cold. This relic was getting more and more interesting. But this couldn't stop him from obtaining the immortal flame. This time, Bufong was determined to obtain the immortal flame, and he had to obtain it. The heaven and earth obsidian flame was no longer able to satisfy Bufong's cooking needs. Bufong urgently needed a new flame to help him improve his cooking skills. As for this ownerless immortal Qi, Bufong's eyes narrowed. Immortal energy was very sharp, but could it break the black turtle constellation walk? The corner of Bufong's mouth twitched. In the next instant, with a thought, a wave of black smoke curled up. The black turtle constellation walk floated in Bufong's hand. It was grabbed by Bufong. An earthy yellow halo floated above the black turtle constellation walk. In the distance, Gongshu Ban saw that Bufong had actually taken out a walk. He couldn't help but be slightly stunned. What was Bufong trying to do? In the next instant, Gongshu Ban's face was filled with ridicule. Because Bufong had directly smashed the walk towards the 10,000-year flame heart lotus seed. With a thought, it wrapped around the 10,000-year flame heart lotus seed. Clanging sounds resounded without end. Immortal energy continuously bombarded the black turtle constellation walk. The immortal energy that was like blade energy became more and more violent, as though it was about to cut the black turtle constellation walk in half. However, the black turtle constellation walk was like a boulder. It was simply difficult to break. In Bufong's spirit sea, a black tortoise with a mountain peak on its back raised its head and let out a roar. His spirit sea instantly surged with heaven-shaking waves. In the next instant, Bufong's mental force surged out. Boom! The black turtle constellation walk spun, smashing away the immortal energy. In the end, the 10,000-year flame heart lotus seed that was like a water droplet was retrieved. The black turtle constellation walk became smaller, floating above Bufong's palm. The corner of Bufong's mouth twitched. His hand reached into the black turtle constellation walk. Very quickly, the 10,000-year flame heart lotus seed was slowly pulled out. In the distance, Gongshu Ban was dumbfounded. There was such a method, blocking the immortal energy and using a walk to scoop out the lotus seed. Judging from the sharpness of the immortal energy, even an immortal tool could be sliced into pieces. The black walk in that mortal's hand was definitely not ordinary. That method, could he imitate it? Gongshu Ban furrowed his brows. The method that Bufong had chosen was the simplest and most violent. However, it was also the most useful. His mind flickered, and a purple kitchen knife appeared in his hand. The kitchen knife swept across, wanting to imitate Bufong's method and dig out the lotus seed. However, very quickly, Gongshu Ban furrowed his brows. Because the purple immortal tool in his hand, a mid-grade immortal tool, was directly shattered by the immortal energy. Cracks appeared on its surface. Gongshu Ban's heart ached, his heart trembling. However, Gongshu Ban clenched his teeth, refusing to believe this. With a thought, instantly, immortal tools flew out from his hands, rushing towards the immortal energy. Since the quality wasn't good, then he would use quantity. All the immortal tools rushed out, blocking the immortal energy. Taking advantage of the moment, the immortal energy was blocked. Gongshu Ban's eyes and hands were sharp. He quickly reached out and grabbed the 10,000-year flame heart lotus seed. A mournful cry rang out. Gong Shuban's forehead was instantly covered in sweat. His eyes turned red. The remnant immortal energy cut Gong Shuban's palm until it was dripping with blood. However, Gong Shuban didn't give up. Hardening his heart, he pulled the lotus seed back. Drip, drip, drip. Drops of dark red blood dripped from Gong Shuban's palm. However, his face revealed a smile. Carefully looking at the 10,000-year flame heart lotus in his hand that was like a crystal water droplet, Gong Shuban heaved a long sigh of relief. In the end, he still obtained it. Bufang looked at Gong Shuban. In his heart, he suddenly felt some admiration for this guy. As if feeling Bufang's gaze, Gong Shuban raised his head, grinned, and nodded at Bufang. Bufang expressionlessly replied. In the next instant, he raised his head, put away the 10,000-year flame heart lotus seed, and walked towards the center. His target was the immortal flame. The golden lotus demonic flame was resplendent, like a blazing sun blooming. It attracted the gazes of countless people. The ground split open, and the golden lotus demonic flame rushed out from the crack, burning fiercely. Immortal tools were thrown into the sky. Bufang stood in front of the golden lotus immortal flame, feeling a terrifying wave of energy. In the distance, Gong Shuban also walked over. He tore apart his brocade robe, wrapping his bloody palm. He stood beside Bufang, raising his head to look at the flame, his eyes filled with passion. This one is Gong Shuban. I've heard a lot about you. Gong Shuban looked at Bufang, smiling as he said, I've heard a lot about you. Bufang was slightly stunned. He was already that famous? In reality, he was a very low-key person, crippling the Tong family's Tong Chung with a wok, completely wiping out the Tong family's silver armor guards, and the Tong family patriarch, Tong Wudi, personally came to rescue them. Your deeds have long been known in Immortal City, Gong Shuban said. Yes. Bufang's name was very famous in Immortal City's various aristocratic families. After all, his deeds were indeed shocking. It's just a daily operation. Bufang's face was emotionless as he said, daily operation. Gong Shuban's face stiffened. This mortal was really like the rumors said, not low-key at all. You want that immortal flame, right? Bufang looked at Gong Shuban, asking. Gong Shuban's face instantly became solemn. That immortal flame is the Golden Lotus Demonic Flame, ranked 59th on the Immortal Flame ranking. I really want it, Gong Shuban said. Immortal Flame ranking? Bufang was bewildered. Interesting. If so, let's have a fair competition. But I still have to remind you that this immortal flame is a little strange. Tap, tap. A wave of clear footsteps resounded in this world. Then everyone was bewildered, instinctively looking into the distance. Very quickly, they discovered two figures slowly walking over from the distance. So beautiful. Everyone's eyes were attracted by that graceful and flirtatious figure. Black armor wrapped around her ample, soft waist. She had an absolutely beautiful face. This was a woman so beautiful that it could move people's souls. The beauty of the child's face caused everyone's heart to be filled with adoration. Luo Ji's slender and straight legs slowly walked forward. Every frown and smile attracted people's eyes. The remaining heaven chief was dumbstruck. Just like a fairy descending to the mortal world. Xinyuan Shaohui's eyes were blurry as she mumbled. Gong Shuyan furrowed her brows. Looking at Xinyuan Shaohui, who looked like a pervert, she was instantly enraged. She slapped Xinyuan Shaohui's face. With a slap, Xinyuan Shaohui felt her entire body shiver, taking in a breath of cold air. What a terrifying charm! Xinyuan Shaohui's mind shivered, looking at the black-armored woman in fear. How could such an existence appear in the land of inheritance? The other heaven chief had already gone crazy. Their eyes reddened as they stormed toward Luo Ji. Luo Ji covered her mouth, giggling. So cute, Xinyuan Shaohui exclaimed. Gong Shuyun glared at her maliciously. No, I'm not charmed this time. I'm admiring you from the bottom of my heart, Xinyuan Shaohui said hurriedly. However, Gong Shuyun's eyes became colder. Looking at the greedy heaven chief, Luo Ji stepped forward. Her body was as light as a swallow. The burly Jin Jiao stood by Luo Ji, snorting coldly. Then he raised his hand, swinging it. Swish! It was as if the sky was torn apart. Those heaven chief were killed instantly, turning into clusters of blood mist, a bunch of trash. Jin Jiao's eyes were indifferent as he said coldly. A moment later, he lifted his head, looking at the netherworld ship in the distance. The runes on his body seemed to flicker with brilliance. Sir Hades, long time no see. Jin Jiao grinned, revealing a smile as he looked at Hades' era. Luo Ji's head popped out from behind him. Big brother Hades, Luo Ji missed you too. On the netherworld ship you looked at Hades' era with an odd face. That woman seemed to have an unusual relationship with Hades' era. Hades' era held a spicy strip in his mouth, covering half of his face with one hand. My charm is too great. It always attracts ignorant girls like moths to the flame. Actually, I have a sincere, low-key heart. Luo Ji's pink hair fluttered. She squinted, looking at the netherworld woman by Hades' era. Luo Ji was unconsciously vigilant toward the women by Hades' side. Netherworld woman? Luo Ji was a little bewildered. Jin Jiao was bewildered. A moment later, the grin on his face deepened. Yu Ji's little sister, the cursed netherworld woman? Yu Ji said, if you see the netherworld woman, bring her back, dead or alive. Seems like this time, we will have a big harvest. Chapter 999. Boom, boom, boom. Jin Jiao walked slowly. With each step, the ground would shake. His slap had blasted most of the heaven chief, turning them into a blood mist that diffused in the air. As for the remaining immortal chefs, their bodies and bodies shivered. Their faces were filled with fear as they felt their hair stand on end. Xianyuan Xiaohui widened her eyes, her body shivering uncontrollably. She was so scared. That burly man was too terrifying. With just one slap, he had killed so many immortal chefs. That was a heaven chief. It was rare for a heaven chief to be born in the immortal city. However, in this trip to the land of inheritance, there were many casualties. How many heaven chief had fallen? The ones who died under the claws of the beast emperor, and the ones who died in the hands of this man. It could be said that this was supposed to be a chance trip for the heaven chief, but in the end, it had become a trip of death. Gong Shuyan also felt frightened. As the little princess of the Gong Shu family, when had she ever experienced such a terrifying scene? It had been a long time since a massacre had happened in the immortal city. Facing this kind of death, she couldn't suppress the fear in her heart. The air suddenly became heavy. Only the sound of footsteps in the air could be heard, which made people's hearts pound hard. That man in the distance was like a brutal executioner, a demon that had walked out of hell. He seemed to feel the gazes of the small fish. Jin Jiao slightly twisted his neck. His eyes shifted, falling on Xianyuan Xiaohui and Gong Shuyan. That sharp gaze seemed to shatter the illusionary void. Xianyuan Xiaohui shivered, coughing out a mouthful of blood. Gong Shuyan was so scared that her face paled. Her legs turned soft, and she directly slumped to the ground. Boom! A loud explosion resounded. The knife-scarred man was swept by the snake-type beast emperor's tail. Blood spurted from his mouth as he was sent flying far away, falling on the ground. Hua floated up, landing on the giant snake's head. His triflower snake eyes turned, gazing at Jin Jiao and Luo Ji in the distance. Hua, come back! Nethery's face turned grave as she waved at Flowery. Hua was bewildered. He happily trotted back to the netherworld ship. The snake-type beast king circled the netherworld ship, gazing at Jin Jiao and Luo Ji from a distance, sticking out its pitch-black tongue. Wow, what a cute little girl. When Luo Ji saw Hua, her eyes brightened. She pouted her red lips, swayed her waist, and shouted, "Little sister, come to big sister quickly." Luo Ji winked at Hua, and a pink light seemed to shoot out from the void. Hua's eyes became misty, hiss. The snake-type beast king leaped up, opening its mouth and hissing at Luo Ji. It stuck out its tongue, interrupting the charm. Hua came back to his senses. His heart trembled. You pulled him a hide behind you. You narrowed her eyes, and her entire eyes turned pitch black. Veins started to spread from the corner of her eyes to her ears. Buzz Luo Ji's figure seemed to teleport, appearing in front of the huge, snake-type Beast King. You little snake, you actually dared to ruin Big Sister's plans. So naughty. Luo Ji pouted, seeming a little dissatisfied. Her pink lips seemed to be smeared with a transparent layer of light, emitting a dazzling radiance. The snake-type Beast King opened its mouth and hissed. Its figure suddenly rushed forward, wanting to swallow Luo Ji. Facing the snake-type Beast King's attack, Luo Ji didn't care. She combed her pink hair, keeping it neat. Then one of her eyes instantly turned purple. Naughty little snake, you deserve to be punished. A clanging sound rang out. Behind Luo Ji, a dazzling radiance shone. A sharp energy burst forth. Luo Ji held a black metal handle in her hand. At the front of the handle, there was a huge scythe hanging down. The scythe was pitch black, reflecting light. It was incomparably awe-inspiring. Death God Scythe. The blade flashed. That huge snake-type Beast King was cut in half. Blood instantly spurted out from the Beast King's broken body. Boom! The Beast King's body landed on the ground, trembling uncontrollably. Yu's eyes shrank. Hades' era covered half of his face, his eyes gradually turning serious. Xin Yuan Xiaohui's face became even paler. Cute? Cute your sister. This woman was simply a demon. Holding the scythe, Luo Ji seemed to have changed into another person. Her aura was extremely terrifying, and she even let out a deafening laugh. Holding the death god scythe in her hand, she constantly swung it. In the next instant, streaks of pitch-black blade energy slashed down. The huge Beast King on the ground was cut into pieces by the blade energy. Its body turned into pieces scattering on the ground. Little snake, you deserve to be punished if you don't behave. Why behind you? Seeing this scene, tears instantly appeared in her triflower snake eyes. Boom! Hua dashed out from behind you. Her feet stepped on the netherworld ship, and her figure instantly enlarged, turning into a two-colored giant python. Oh, this little sister is actually a seven-colored sky devouring python. Luo Ji was bewildered, mumbling to herself. What a pity! It's just a seven-colored sky devouring python in its infancy. And it's still a baby? Luo Ji laughed loudly, her purple eyes surging with craziness. In the next instant, she swung the scythe, and the blade energy surged. No! Yu's pitch-black eyes instantly shrank, her body and soul feeling cold. Boom! Luo Ji was bewildered, her pink hair fluttering in the air. The smile on her face froze as she blankly looked ahead. There, a handsome figure appeared, reaching out to grab the blade of the death god scythe. Nether King Ha's hair fluttered in the wind. His shirt was unbuttoned, revealing his fair skin. The triflower snake eyes of the seven-colored sky devouring python that Hua had turned into a human, landing on the netherworld ship. Pouting, I said that's enough. Hades' era lifted his head, his face stern and cold. Swish, Luo Ji retracted the death god's scythe, and the blade slashed across Hades' era's palm. Instantly, blood splashed. However, the wound on Hades' era's palm instantly healed. Luo Ji grinned, staring at the fresh blood on the scythe, her eyes widening. Big brother Hades, Luo Ji missed you so much. Luo Ji licked her pink lips. In the next instant, her small tongue stuck out, licking the blood on the scythe into her mouth. Narrowing her eyes, she took a deep breath. With a gulp, her throat moved, swallowing the blood into her stomach. An intoxicated look appeared on her face. Hades' era indifferently looked at Luo Ji, exhaling. Then he took out a spicy strip, holding it in the corner of his mouth. Did that old man Long ask you to bring me back? This king's flawless disguise was actually seen through by you? Hades' era said calmly. You looked at Hades' era, who was completely different from usual, bewildered. Buzz, the death god sighed and Luo Ji's hand disappeared. Staring at Hades' era, pink hearts seemed to appear in her eyes. Her body suddenly straightened, her chest trembling. Then, she pounced on Hades' era. However, Hades' era raised a finger, tapping on Luo Ji's head, giving her a hard push. Luo Ji's figure was pushed backward. Jin Jiao raised his hand, catching Luo Ji, then put her down. Lord Hades, don't make things difficult for me. Come back with me. Yeah. Big brother Hades, when we go back, Luo Ji will warm your bed. Luo Ji pursed her lips, her charming face blushing. Hades' era held the spicy strip in his mouth, the corners of his mouth twitching. Don't warm my bed. You're my granddad. I don't dare. But it's not impossible for me to go back with you. Hades' era said. Jin Jiao tilted his head, his eyes sharp. Luo Ji covered her face, her head resting on Jin Jiao's arm. She was speechless, tears rolling down her cheeks. This was the 9,983rd time that her big brother Hades had given her the cold shoulder, but I have a condition. Hades said. The corners of Jin Jiao's mouth rose. What condition? Let go of Nethery and that little snake. Hades' era reached out his hand, playing with his hair. No way. Big Sister Yuji said that if we see the Netherworld woman, we must bring her back, dead or alive. Luo Ji lifted her head, wiping the tears from the corners of her eyes. Jin Jiao rubbed his golden horn, saying, yeah, we can let go of the seven-colored sky-devouring python, but the Netherworld woman must go back with us. Otherwise, we'll beat her to death and bring her back. Why did that old man Long send such a blockhead like you? Why didn't he send Yin Jiao? A smart person like I should have a common language with a smart, flirtatious **star like Yin Jiao. Hades' era was speechless, rubbing his forehead. I said if you let the Netherworld woman go, I will go with you. If you don't let her go, then we'll have to fight. Hades' eyes became sharp as he said coldly. The atmosphere became fierce in just a blink of an eye. Jin Jiao gazed at Hades' era. His mouth slowly parted, and a moment later, his eyes widened. I couldn't ask for more. Boom! In just a blink of an eye, Jin Jiao disappeared from his spot. How could this immortal flame be strange? It's the most beautiful immortal flame I've ever seen. No wonder it's an immortal flame on the immortal flame ranking. Gongshu Ban said, intoxicated. Bufang looked at Gongshu Ban, his face emotionless. His intuition told him that something was strange. Immortal energy with an owner. Could it be that someone was controlling everything from behind the scenes? However, before Bufang could think much, the atmosphere suddenly changed. Gongshu Ban woke up in a blink of an eye. His eyes shrank as he gazed at the void. There, the immortal tools that the Golden Lotus demonic flame had shot out revolved unceasingly. A moment later, these immortal tools formed a storm, smashing toward Bufang and Gongshu Ban below. It was a green kitchen knife with immortal energy swirling around it. It seemed to tear the void, slashing toward Bufang. It was incomparably sharp, as though it wanted to cut Bufang into two halves. Boom! With an explosive sound, the kitchen knife slashed on the ground. At the same time, a wok smashed down, hitting the ground beside Bufang. Chopsticks, spoons, stoves, all kinds of kitchen knives, wok, all kinds of immortal tools smashed down. Bufang furrowed his brows. Gongshu Ban was bewildered. Explosions rang out unceasingly. Smoke and dust billowed. The ground cracked from the impact. A moment later, a golden flame burst out from the ground. In just a blink of an eye, it swallowed Gongshu Ban and Bufang. The scene suddenly changed. Bufang and Gongshu Ban appeared in another world. The air here was extremely hot, filled with scorching heat. The two exchanged looks, not knowing where they were. All of a sudden, their minds flickered. They lifted their heads, looking above their heads. There was a ball of golden flames in the shape of a golden lotus burning fiercely there. It's a golden lotus demonic flame's flame seed. Gongshu Ban's entire body shivered, screaming hoarsely. Flame seed? Bufang's eyes brightened. To subdue the flame, The first thing he had to do was subdue the flame seed. As long as he subdued the flame seed, it meant that he could control the immortal flame. But how could the flame seed appear so easily? Bufang furrowed his brows. He felt that things weren't that simple. Was there any connection between the immortal energy that had an owner and the flame seed that had suddenly appeared? All of a sudden, while the two of them were focused on the golden lotus demonic flame's flame seed in the sky, a leisurely song drifted over, lingering in the entire space of flames. Deep in the flames, a charming man with disheveled hair came, holding a kitchen knife and a wok, humming a song. Chapter 1000. Couldn't ask for more. Jin Jiao's eyes shone brightly. A moment later, his entire body disappeared from his spot. When he reappeared, he was right in front of Hades' Era. A fist, like a giant hammer, pounded on Hades' Era's head. Terrifying shock waves surged forth. Even space itself seemed to be on the verge of collapsing under this punch. In the distance, Xianyuan Xiaohui felt as though her heart was about to stop. What kind of existence was that muscular man? Why did he feel that he was even more terrifying than the Tong family's head? It should be known that the Tong family's head was in existence at 6-star true immortal realm. In the Heaven Chief realm, he was a top-notch expert. However, this muscular man only needed to casually strike, and he could make people feel as though their souls were about to scatter. The spicy strip at the corner of Hades' Era's mouth curled. He was hit by the muscular man's fist. Under this fist, a roar like a tsunami resounded. The illusionary void seemed to explode. However, Jin Jiao's face didn't show any trace of joy, because in his eyes, Hades' Era's body was slowly dispersing. It was just an afterimage. In the distance, Luo Ji's slender legs were crossed. Her ample bosom heaved unceasingly. She squinted, watching the battle between Jin Jiao and Hades' Era with great interest. Jin Jiao was the most combative of the 5 great Earth prison overlords. Of course, his competence wasn't to be doubted. I wonder if Big Brother Hades can resist it. Luo Ji's mouth curved into a smile. You're really fast. Jin Jiao fumed a mouthful of hot air from his nose. A moment later, his figure disappeared. Boom, boom, boom. As soon as Hades' Era's figure reappeared in the distance, Jin Jiao's fist came. With a loud bang, the void collapsed from the impact. Nether King Air, once again moved to the distance. Their speed was really fast. In the illusionary void, they constantly disappeared and reappeared. Their teleportation was so fast that it dazzled people's eyes. Nethery's pitch-black eyes were fixed on the battle in front of her. She did not relax in the slightest. Although Hades' Era was strong, none of the 5 Hell Overlords were weak. Fortunately, Hell Overlord Jin Jiao came today. If the Goldhorn and Silverhorn brothers appeared together, Hades would definitely be no match for them. When the 2 brothers joined forces, they were extremely powerful. Don't run. Come and fight. A punch shattered the void, but the collapsed void quickly recovered. Jin Jiao's eyes widened as he roared. Hades' figure appeared in the distance. He swallowed the last bit of chili strip and chewed on it. Wait, while I prepare my emotions. Hades' Era said. The spectators were speechless. Xianyuan Xiaowei didn't know whether to laugh or cry. As expected of someone who hung out with Owner Bu, he was so humorous. Brewing emotions, Jin Jiao's mouth twitched. Then he grinned and slightly bent his waist. His figure seemed to pierce through the void, turning into shadows as he appeared in front of Hades' Era. Boom, boom, boom. Punches piled on each other. The entire void was blown apart by the bombardment. Swish, Hades' Era's figure slowly descended. Gulp. He swallowed the chili strip in his mouth. Then he gently exhaled. My emotions have finished brewing, Hades said. Then his eyes became sharp. It's time for me to see Earth Prison Overlord Jin Jiao's power. Jin Jiao slowly burst into laughter. Fight Hades! Shouting, Jin Jiao's bulging muscles bulged one more time. The lines on his skin seemed to tremble. A moment later, his arm lashed out. The void exploded. Boom, boom. A series of explosions shot toward Hades' era. Hades' hair fluttered. This time, he didn't dodge. Instead, he raised his hand, slapping forward. Boom! After an explosion, the smoke vanished. Hades' era's slap had just blocked Jin Jiao's punch. Compared to Jin Jiao, Nether King Ha was like a child. However, that palm was still blocked. Huff! He gently exhaled. His arm suddenly shot out a wave of energy. Jin Jiao cocked his head, looking at Hades, who was pushed back by the recoil. Then, Hades clenched his fists. A punch blasted out. It ruthlessly hit Jin Jiao's fist. Two fists, which weren't of the same weight class, collided. Jin Jiao felt a huge explosion of energy. His figure was pushed back several steps. You want to fight? You think I'm afraid of you? Whoever is a F***king coward is a mangy dog. A crazed look appeared in the Nether King's eyes. A moment later, his figure teleported, disappearing. Jin Jiao grinned. This is interesting. Boom, boom. A punch, a kick, an elbow strike, a palm strike. One big and one small. The two of them started a fight in the void. He was a little bewildered. Looking at the rampaging Hades era in the void, she was a little dazed. It was the first time she had met such a rampaging Hades era. Every fist collided with flesh, causing the void to shatter. That kind of power from the collision of flesh was transmitted to everyone's ears, making them shudder. Boom! The two of them suddenly separated, stepping on the void. After the void caved in, the two of them attacked again, clashing. As they fought, pitch-black nether energy slowly emerged from their bodies. Their battle seemed to reach its climax. Boom! A loud explosion resounded. Jin Jiao was suddenly struck, and his body was shot out, falling rapidly from the void. He crashed into a mountain range in the distance, causing the entire mountain range to collapse. The Nether King stood in the void, his chest rising and falling slightly. Rumble. In the ruins, rocks rolled down. Jin Jiao crawled out, safe and sound. The fighting will in his eyes became thicker. As expected of Lord Nether King. It's really satisfying. You can fight a little better than that flirtatious Yin Jiao, Hades said. Yeah, the warm-up is over. It's time to show my real power. Jin Jiao said with a smile. Warm-up? Everybody was dumbstruck. This kind of battle was just a warm-up. Xinyuan Xiaohui felt like his world was collapsing. Was this what a true expert was like? Too scary. His power was too strong. I have also finished digesting, Hades said. Boom. As soon as he said that, the nether energy on Jin Jiao's body burst out. A moment later, it shot up into the sky, turning into a tyrannical phantom of nether energy behind him. The golden horn on his head also glowed. The veins on his body seemed to have come to life and began to tremble rapidly. Shortly after, pieces of armor expanded, covering his entire body. In just a blink of an eye, Jin Jiao's aura became incomparably tyrannical. The void of this small world seemed to be shrouded by dark clouds. Vaguely, it seemed like it couldn't hold on for much longer. Transform? To deal with you, I don't need to transform. Hades smiled faintly. Black energy expanded, and Hades' phantom emerged behind his body. Jin Jiao laughed loudly. Wearing black armor, he dashed out instantly. As the fist smashed down, it immediately turned into a sky full of fist shadows that blotted out the sun. The phantom of Jin Jiao, behind him, and Hades' phantom collided. Rumble. The entire space seemed to tremble. Xinyuan Xiaohui was already numb. This level of battle was beyond his imagination. Gongshu Ban's body tensed, gazing at the seductive man who was humming a song in the distance. Indeed, it was a man. Although he had a full head of hair, his chiseled face and the Adam's apple on his neck showed his gender. Why is there someone here? Gongshu Ban's eyes shrank, asking suspiciously. Bufong was calm. He had felt that this immortal flame was a little different. Now, it seemed like it was the case. The man's voice was still very pleasant to listen to. It was very pleasing to the ear, and it lingered in their ears, making their bodies and minds feel relaxed. Eventually, the man appeared in front of them. His pitch-black eyes indifferently looked at Bu Fong and Gong Shu Ban. Finally, someone's here, and it's two Heaven Chiefs. Seems like we're fated, said the man. Fated? Meeting is fated? The corners of Bu Fong's mouth twitched. No, being able to hear my voice is fated. If I'm not wrong, you're here for this immortal flame, said the man. I'm the previous master of this golden lotus demonic flame. What? Gong Shu Ban and Bu Fong exchanged looks. The place you're in now is my spirit sea, said the man with a smile. His smile seemed to emit a different kind of charm. This is the spirit sea? Bu Fong narrowed his eyes, looking around. This flame space was really big, but compared to Bu Fong's boundless spirit sea, this place was really small. Spirit sea, does Senior want us to inherit your inheritance? Gong Shu Ban seemed to think of something, instantly becoming excited. The seductive man nodded, smiling. Not you guys, but one of you. There's only one inheritance, and only one person can get it. This person must be one of you. The man's voice faded. Gong Shu Ban's face changed. It was really an inheritance. This was a big opportunity, to be able to create an inheritance. He was at least a third-rank Heaven Chief when he was alive. Was this seductive man in front of them a third-rank Heaven Chief when he was alive? The man raised a blue, red, and yellow wok in one hand and the light blue kitchen knife in the other, smiling at Bu Fong and Gong Shu Ban. If you pass my test, the tricolored yellow mystery wok, the star knife, and the golden lotus demonic flame above your heads will all belong to you. Bu Fong was okay. After listening to the man, his face didn't change. However, after listening to him, Gong Shu Ban's face completely changed. Tricolored yellow mystery wok, star knife. You're the half-step Qilin chef who shook the immortal city and even challenged the city lord. Tong Ruo, the previous master of the Tong family. Tong Ruo. The man was a little surprised. He didn't think that he would be recognized. Yes, it's me. Unfortunately, I've become a pile of dirt. I'm not as brave as you said, the man said casually. Gong Shu Ban was so excited. The inheritance of a half-step Qilin chef. This was a truly great opportunity. Bu Fong furrowed his brows. The Tong family? Thinking about what the system said about the immortal energy that wrapped around the 10,000-year flame heart lotus seed, Bu Fong felt that something was wrong. He didn't care about Bu Fong and Gong Shu Ban. The man hummed a ballad again. In next to no time, a change occurred in this world. In the endless flame space, two stoves slowly appeared. Those were immortal stoves, with immortal energy lingering around them. They were extraordinary. Follow my request. Cook dishes and let me see your talents. The winner will get everything I have, the seductive man said with a smile. In the next instant, in the sky, the throbbing golden lotus demonic flame suddenly split into two, falling down. They landed on the stoves in front of the two people. Also, let me see which one of you can inherit my immortal flame. Chapter 1001. Golden Lotus Demonic Flame. Gong Shu Ban looked at the blazing flame on the stove, and he couldn't help but feel excited. His eyes were filled with joy and joy. Would he get the inheritance of a half-step Qilin chef? Immortal flame, immortal tools, and immortal ingredients. All three. Moreover, he could get the essence of a half-step Qilin chef's cooking skills. How could he not be excited about such a thing? The bewitching man smiled, looking at Bu Fong and Gong Shu Ban. He seemed to feel the joy from them. Of course, the joy he felt from Bu Fong was *T. Bu Fong didn't have any ripples in front of him. Besides the golden lotus demonic flame, which could stir up waves in his heart, the others didn't really make him excited. The so-called immortal tools of a half-step Qilin chef were much weaker than the god of cooking set that Bu Fong had. How could Bu Fong be excited because of some inferior tools? However, if he could get the golden lotus demonic flame, it would be a good thing. It's just a cooking competition. Gong Shu Ban's eyes sparkled with excitement. He was the genius heaven chief of the Gongshu family, the one who had the highest chance of breaking through to the Qilin chef realm. He wasn't afraid of a cooking competition. Although there were many rumors about Bu Fong, he was still confident. Yeah, it's just a cooking competition. I'll provide the ingredients. You guys just need to show me your best side. Tong Ruo smiled. A moment later, the entire flaming space changed one more time. The flame burned fiercely, and the temperature rose in just a blink of an eye. Exquisite ingredients immediately appeared on the side of the stove. Tofu. Bu Fong and Gongshu Ban looked at the glowing ingredients. They were bewildered. They didn't expect to cook tofu. Yeah, tofu. The seductive man, Tong Ruo, revealed a faint smile as he looked at the tofu on the stove with some nostalgia. Tofu has accompanied me as I grew up. Although I failed to break through to the Qilin chef realm because of tofu, I still love tofu, and I will never regret it. The seductive man, Tong Ruo, said. Tofu? Bu Fong narrowed his eyes. Tofu was indeed a good ingredient. For example, he was a person who liked to make tofu. For example, stinky tofu. His mind flickered, and Bu Fong and Gongshu Ban appeared on their respective stoves. Golden flames burned fiercely within, illuminating their faces. Now let's start cooking. Tong Ruo put his hands behind his back and smiled. Boom, boom, boom. Terrifying explosions kept ringing out in the void. The entire space seemed to be trembling violently. In the distance, Xinyuan Xiaohui and Gongshu Yun, who were watching the battle, were completely dumbstruck. They could only gawk at the unceasing explosions in the air. Hades's phantom towered between the sky and the earth. Each of his strikes seemed to shatter the void. Jin Jiao was even more valiant. Even though he was bombarded to the ground by Hades, he still kept rushing forward. The golden horn phantom dissipated. With a single step, it traversed the void and appeared in front of Hades. Boom! Their fists collided. Terrifying energy ripples immediately spread out in the void, bombarding the surroundings. Wind and waves swept over, blowing the entire world. It seemed to shake uncontrollably. The Netherworld ship hovered in the void. Hua, and you stood on the ship, focusing on the battle in the field. Yu's pitch-black eyes gazed at them. Her face was unprecedentedly solemn. Hades' era was incomparably dignified. It was different from his usual carefree manner. At this moment, he had the true dignity of Hades. Far from him, Luo Ji was floating cross-legged in the void. Her eyes sparkled as she watched. Worthy of my Hades, Ji. Compared to that big guy, Jin Jiao, you're much better looking. Luo Ji stuck out her small tongue, licking her soft red lips. Jin Jiao was like an ancient savage beast. With an angry roar, the ground shattered inch by inch. Terrifying energy shot up into the sky. The nether energy around him was so thick that it was about to materialize. However, Jin Jiao, who had shot up into the sky, was still hit by Hades' finger pounding into the ground. Hades pointed. Tens of thousands of strands of nether energy congregated, turning into a solid finger that covered the sky. That finger seemed to pierce through the void. Even the void crumbled inch by inch under the pressure of this finger. Jin Jiao was pounded into the ground, making a deep dent. No matter what, I am the lord of the netherworld. Don't underestimate me. Hades' era said casually. His voice was indifferent like never before. Lord of the netherworld, Jin Jiao crawled out of the ruin. The black armor on his body was still as shiny as before. A suppressed laughter came from Jin Jiao's mouth. In the void, Luo Ji narrowed her eyes. Then, a purple light shot out from her pupils. Jin Jiao raised his hand, grinning wildly. His face was filled with madness. The Lord of the Netherworld isn't the Lord of the Netherworld anymore. You've just inherited the title of the Lord of the Netherworld, but you don't have the power to match it. Boom! A beam of light rolled down from the sky. A moment later, the phantom of a massive weapon condensed in Jin Jiao's hand. That phantom condensed quickly. Eventually, it turned into a round iron fan. There seemed to be an eye drawn in the center of that iron fan. As soon as this weapon appeared, Hades' era's eyes shrank. Luo Ji gaped in astonishment, her soft, red lips parting. Divine weapon. Corpse ghost soul, ceiling fan. Jin Jiao roared. Then, the veins on his entire body bulged, and his face reddened. Suddenly, he used force to fan. Instantly, the wind howled. This wind was cold, cold, and filled with deathly stillness. After fanning, the entire world seemed to be filled with black wind. The ground was exploding at a rapid speed. It shattered unceasingly. The surviving Heaven Chief was frightened. He wanted to run away, but before he could get up from the ground, the black wind had already swept him. The vitality in his body vanished in just a blink of an eye. His entire body also became ice-cold and stiff. His movements still maintained the terrified expression from before. When Xinyuan Xiaohui and Gong Shuyun saw this, they were scared out of their wits. Gong Shuyun had never seen such a terrifying scene. She was so scared that her legs turned jelly. Xinyuan Xiaohui knew that she couldn't just stand there and wait for death. Thus, he lifted Gong Shuyun, whose legs were jelly, and dashed toward the golden lotus demonic flame. The terrifyingly high temperature made Xinyuan Xiaohui feel as though his entire body was about to be ignited. However, his judgment was correct, because the gust of death didn't blow in. Instead, it was stopped by the golden lotus demonic flame. Of course, the golden lotus demonic flame was almost extinguished. However, since the golden horn's target wasn't the immortal flame was able to stop it. Put me down. Gong Shuyun pulled herself together, struggling on Xinyuan Xiaohui's body. Eventually, she got down. She raised her hand, planning to slap the fellow who had taken advantage of her. However, she was slightly taken aback by Xinyuan Xiaohui's lifeless gaze. Following Xinyuan Xiaohui's gaze, she took a deep breath of cold air. Brother, within the blazing golden immortal fire, an extremely clear image appeared. In that picture, there were 3 figures. 2 of them were standing in front of the stove. From their posture, it seemed they were about to cook. Moreover, the atmosphere between the 2 seemed to be a cooking competition. It's Owner Bu. Owner Bu wants to compete with Gong Shuban. Is it the key to get the immortal flame? Xinyuan Xiaohui's eyes narrowed as he stared at the image carefully. My brother will win. No one from the young generation can beat my brother in cooking, Gong Shuyun said proudly. The 2 of them, who were originally terrified by the threat of the wind of death, were now no longer fearful. They stared at the scene and watched it with great interest. In that picture, the 2 of them started to cook. Yu hugged Hua and hid inside the Netherworld ship. The terrifying gust of wind hit the Netherworld ship. The ship that could break the void and travel through secret realms shivered unceasingly under this gust, as if it was about to shatter. Luo Ji became solemn at this moment. She cursed Jin Jiao under her breath. The death god scythe emerged by her side, spinning unceasingly. Beams of light shot out, blocking the gust of wind outside. The cold wind with the aura of death blew for a long time. Finally, it stopped. The entire space seemed to become quieter. Luo Ji held the death god's scythe, her purple eyes shooting out radiance. Inside the Netherworld ship, Yu and Hua craned their necks to look outside. Their eyes shrank. A gust of wind had changed the terrain of the entire space. In front of Jin Jiao, the dust that filled the sky was blown away, and it actually piled up into a huge mountain. Hades' era was piled up by that mountain. Your father is the real Lord Hades. His prestige shakes the entire Netherworld, ruling Earth Prison. Even Nether Prison's experts don't dare to be impudent. Jin Jiao looked at the mountain, holding the massive metal fan as he sneered. And you are just a weakling who inherited the title of Hades. The Netherworld woman's eyes were a little complicated. Being the Netherworld woman of the Netherworld, she knew many secrets. What Jin Jiao said was the truth. Compared to the previous Hades, Hades' era was much weaker. The reason why you were banished to the secret domain was because of the previous Hades. The curse on her body was really strange. Even the previous Hades couldn't lift it. He could only suppress it. Banishing the secret domain was the way to suppress it. Now, with the fall of the previous Hades, the rule that the previous Hades had set on you was getting weaker and weaker. The curse could break out. It was also the reason why Jin Jiao and Luo Ji wanted to capture her. If the curse broke out, it would be a catastrophe. However, you knew that the curse on her body had been suppressed because of Bu Feng's dishes. Thus, she didn't want to leave. Rumble, crushed rocks rolled down. The mountain peaks trembled slightly as cracks slowly appeared on them. Eventually, with a rumble, the entire mountain peak exploded. Terrifying nether energy soared into the sky. A tall and slender figure emerged from within. Crack! Crack! Jin Jiao's eyes gazed at the void. There, Hades' era was indifferently looking at him. On Hades' body, pieces of scarlet armor emerged, covering Hades' body. With every additional set of armor, the Nether King's aura would become stronger. A clanging sound rang out. The pair of ferocious wings on the back of the metal armor opened as the helmet descended. Nether King Erha's fluttering hair was also wrapped up. Instantly, a terrifying pressure filled the sky. I hate people talking about my father the most. Jin Jiao, do you want to die? Hades' era craned his neck, squinting as he stared at Jin Jiao, who was holding the metal fan. Immortal City, Heaven Chief worldlying in the Heaven Chief restaurant. The Lord Go opened his eyes. Boom! A terrifying aura surged from the Lord Go. The Black Dragon King, who was lying on the chair, drooling and snoring, suddenly felt suffocated. He almost choked on his own saliva, his eyes bulging. He turned his head and was shocked to find that the lazy fat dog was emitting a terrifying aura. The black dog's eyes turned scarlet. That redness made the Black Dragon King feel like he was facing a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. Too terrifying. The Black Dragon King was dumbstruck. However, this scene only appeared for a moment before the Lord Go resumed his normal state. Sighing, he shook his head, lying down again. The Black Dragon King was dumbstruck. You didn't make such a big fuss just to scare the dragon, did you? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.